Call to order. Regularly scheduled meeting of the El Segundo City Council. We have the invocation by Pastor Mark Stepp of Oceanside Christian Fellowship, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Persuk. And it's great to see the Little League and all the members of the community here tonight. So thank you for being here. We'll make this quick. Not the pledge, but everything else, hopefully.
Would you bow your heads with me as I give thanks and ask God's continued blessings on our leaders, our city, and the meeting this evening? Let's pray. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the many blessings you have poured out on the city of El Segundo. We know how good and pleasant it is when communities dwell in unity. We thank you for the unity that so often characterizes the people of El Segundo. Thank you for our leaders, from the elected officials to department leaders to those who are out in the field making sure things are done for the common good. Lord Jesus, we thank you for their commitment to our city and citizenry. Thanks also for those who protect us and work hard to keep our city and citizens safe. May you continue to use us all for your glory and the common good. Tonight, we ask for your blessing on Mayor Boyles and our council. Give them much wisdom and grace as they continue leading our community into the future. And for our city, Lord Jesus, may you be gracious to us and bless us and make your face to shine upon us. May your will be done concerning the many items of business discussed tonight. With grateful hearts we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, if you guys, gentlemen, thank you. We're going to, if it's all right with you, Madam Clerk, we'll go a little bit out of order in the presentations. Is that all right? Okay. We've got a lot of young men in the audience who, and some incredible female coaches as well that are here for the Little League All-Star Team Commendation. So I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Pimentel to talk about some commendations we have for this evening.
Thank you. Today we're going to recognize 3 different Little League All-Star teams who advanced in the various state tournaments. We thought it was important as a council to recognize these All-Star teams because there's something particular about how All-Star teams succeed that we think is evocative of the way that El Segundo operates. You are selected for an All-Star team because of your individual excellence. But baseball teams or teams in general do not win based upon individual excellence. It's based on suborning those abilities to the way a team succeeds. And the way you did that, we found, represents the city of El Segundo, the way we like to be perceived by other cities in California. We think it is emblematic of the way that we proceed as a community, and we want to thank you for being here. So what we'd like to do is bring you up in age order. So we'd like the 9s and 10s to come up and recognize the manager, Jeanette Osborne, and her staff. We have proclamations. Manager Osborne, if you'd like to say anything, please come on up.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank the council. Thank you for having us here today. And to all the amazing residents of El Segundo who have supported all of these players and coaches and families throughout this amazing journey that we've all been on. And I hate talking in front of people, so this is not my high point. But these kids are great, and I appreciate you guys recognizing them. And thank you for all of the support you guys have given. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. I've got certificates for you and your coaches. If you'd like to bring your team up for a photo, we have them right here. All right, is Eddie here? Come on down. For our 10s and 11s advance to the district tournament. Coach Lee, if you'd like to say some words to your team.
I wanted to say thank you guys very much for recognizing this is something that's real important to the boys, and to be recognized is fantastic. So to have them come out is great. I want to congratulate the 12s and the 10s. You guys did fantastic, and it's wonderful because they set a great example. And like I said, we're a small community. It's great to come out and support all the boys. To see them go so far was fantastic, and you guys gave us a great goal for next year. Because as 11s, our jobs as 12s next year is to get as far as you guys did. So congratulations, and thank you guys very much for having us out today.
Gentlemen. Last up, we'll bring up the 11s and 12s. It's important to note this team finished in the top 1% of all performing Little Leagues in the state of California. So when you talk about a state or you talk about a county that's bigger than 42 states and a state that's bigger than most countries in the world, that really tells you what level of performance we're getting out of a town of 17,000 people. So, gentlemen, we appreciate it. Coach Mike, if you'd like to say something.
Obviously, like everybody else, we'd like to thank the City Council, the players, the parents, the volunteers, the board, coaches, everything that puts the Little League together, from opening day parade, snack bar. It was a great run. We had a blast. Most of these boys I've coached at one former level since they were 6 years old or 5 years old. So it was a great time. Everybody's involved. Parents have little kids, older kids. My only challenge to all of you is keep it going, have fun. The kids had a blast. With that, I'd just like to say thank you, everybody. We had a good time. Take pictures, right?
Okay, everybody. Here we go. And over here. Eyes here. Couple more. And one more. And if you can stay right there.
Gentlemen. Thank you. I was just gonna say, I'm sure your president Lance Giroux shared with you that you are sticking around until about 9 p.m. And no?
Thank you.
Okay,
Mike.
we'll let you slide. Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much, Mike. Thank you. All right, but Little League, thanks. To any last words? If not, we're going to. Great job. Thank you so much
thank you
for
guys.
being
Really
here.
appreciate
Yeah. You guys don't have to stay, but thank you.
Let's go, boys. Let them do their business.
Names on the back. I know now.
Hello.
Back in the day, we were wearing jerseys that were 5, 6 years old. Put our balls out in front. That's pretty cool.
The 910 was
Oh
part
my
of that
gosh.
1%. Okay, I was like, oh, okay, awesome, thank you.
All right, we are back to some semblance of normalcy. All right, we have a presentation, and then we got actually, we have a proclamation and then a presentation. So I'll read the proclamation. Proud to do so, as a long-standing member of Kiwanis. I'll read this proclamation. Whereas the fair on Richmond Street has proudly produced, I think this should say, and organized by the, is proudly produced and organized by the El Segundo Kiwanis Club as a fundraiser for local scholarships, school funding, and projects for the youth of El Segundo. And whereas the fair on Richmond Street provides El Segundo school student groups, civic clubs, and nonprofit organizations an opportunity to promote their associations and to raise funds for their school and community projects through the sale of snacks, arts and crafts, and other items. And whereas the fair on Richmond Street affords people from the opportunity to discover the hometown atmosphere of downtown El Segundo while experiencing wholesome family entertainment at its finest. And whereas the City Council recognizes the merits of the fair on Richmond Street and commends the El Segundo Kiwanis Club for continuing to carry on this traditional El Segundo event, which has become a celebration of community. Now, therefore, the mayor and members of the City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, hereby proclaim the observance of the 2018 The Fair on Richmond Street from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday, September 22nd, 2018, and invite the community to give generous support to all the groups, organizations, merchants, and volunteers participating in the fair. And here to accept the proclamation, and I'm sure say a few words. Last time he was here, he had a check for $50,000. Did you bring any money with you today, Barry? You're wearing your no AYSO hat, no AYSA Regional Commissioner hat. So, Barry, would you like to say a few words before accepting the proclamation about the fair itself?
I would. Thank you for the proclamation. So this is the 43rd annual this Saturday, and we've been working to make it more and more about El Segundo. And what we started last year, got even bigger this year, which is the north end of Richmond Street is all school groups and nonprofits, which we're allowing. The Kiwanis sponsor their booth, so there's no fees for them. So we actually have groups coming out from each of the schools, plus non-profit groups like the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and so you're going to see a lot of locals out there. And then on our main stage that starts at 10 in the morning, right in the middle of Grand Avenue, everyone on our main stage is an El Segundo band or group. So, and we've, our beer garden's back again, so don't think it's just for kids. So that opens at, 6 a.m.? No, 10 a.m. And we'll have live music in the beer garden too. So there's petting zoos, horses, ponies for the kids, rides and play things for the kids. We have 100 merchants coming out that are artists and vendors, including for the first time 2 restaurant food companies from El Segundo. So we've never had like actual food providers at the fair. So first time we broke through that one. So, the people come from all over the South Bay, because we do surveys of the vendors and people come and do their Christmas shopping at this. But it's meant to be a fun day. So hope to see everybody out there. The weather's going to be perfect, so no excuse not to get out there and support all these groups. So thanks for the
Great.
proclamation.
I have a proclamation for you, Barry. Thank you. Let's go up and join him for a photo, shall we?
Anybody else that I can invite up from Kiwanis? Yes, sir. Okay. One over here real quick. One, two, and one more. Okay. And one for me here. Actually, a couple. Here we go. 1, 2, and a couple more. And just one more. Thank you so much.
Okay, then thank you for that. We have a presentation.
Mayor, members of council, one of the real rewarding things for me personally that we did last year was Government Day, when we had the seniors come in and shadow council members, shadow the city attorney, shadow the department heads, learn a lot about government, hopefully get interested in future careers in government. And as a result of that, for the first time, I think ever, we decided to offer a summer internship program for a graduating El Segundo High School senior to spend a few months working with us, improving their resume, learning about government, and hopefully getting interested in a career in government. And this year we had Katherine Kakuske, who came and joined us and worked in both our library and recreation departments. And part of her project is to present what she worked on, get a chance to make a presentation to the council. And Katherine's off to college in about a week, 2 weeks? Tomorrow. Ah, wow. Tomorrow. So this is our send-off for Katherine.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Katherine. Where are you going to school?
University of Oregon.
Nice. Go Ducks. All right. Take it away.
Good evening, City Council members. Thank you for having me here today. So for over the past 8 weeks, I have been working as an intern with the City of El Segundo, sharing half my time with the El Segundo Public Library and the other half with the El Segundo Parks and Rec. Because I'm a young adult, I thought I'd be the best asset working with the El Segundo Teen Center, because I could input my perspective as a young adult to help most benefit the Teen Center. So the first facility I worked with was the Teen Center. When I first started was when the Gabba tournament was taking place, which is a basketball tournament containing about 16 teams, which was very fun environment to work with and start off my internship. The Teen Center staff was kind enough to introduce me to the responsibilities of working with the Teen Center, as well as just showing me around the equipment of basketballs and everything. I was also lucky to actually help work with some of the Teen Center camps where they play volleyball and bago, and they actually get the opportunity to go on trips to Mulligan's and to the Plunge, which I thought was a very great opportunity. The age range usually is around 11 to 14. And with every aspect of the Teen Center, I got to learn that it all wraps around the goal of providing a safe and engaging environment and making sure making the Teen Center an environment where the parents can feel comfortable having their kids here, and as well as having the teens engaged and having fun, and also being able to trust that they're in good hands with us at the El Segundo Teen Center. So the next facility that I worked with was probably a focus that I knew the least about, but I also found the most fascinating, which was the Jocelyn Center. One aspect that I had no idea about was the Meals on Wheels program, which for a small donation, the Jocelyn Center will deliver meals, mostly senior citizens, straight to their door, and they'll customize the meals based on dietary and nutritional aspects, which I thought was a very valuable asset. I think the most popular programs that the Jocelyn Center offers are the Dial-A-Ride programs, where senior citizens can be dropped off and picked up anywhere in El Segundo to anywhere, ranging from Rite Aid to 99-cent store, which I think would be very helpful to them. And on Thursdays, they also do Dr. Dial-A-Ride, where they deliver them to their doctor's appointments anywhere in the South Bay, which is very helpful. And then obviously we have the beach shuttle, which is very popular, mostly among young adults and teens, where they can be transported to El Porto Beach and Grand Beach for $1, excuse me. And I realized that most of these, they have card games and all these activities at the Jocelyn Center, but their main emphasis is around transportation. The next area I worked with was the checkout building in the clubhouse, and although they do perform similar tasks, I found they focus on slightly different areas. The checkout building would mostly focus on field reservations or campfires or tennis court reservations, whereas the clubhouse would probably do reservations that you may see in the El Segundo Insider, such as gymnastics classes or arts and crafts. What I was very impressed by working with them was their transition from making reservations on paper to now they do all the reservations electronically, and I was very fascinated by the step they took to make their reservations more efficient and satisfactory. So moving on to the plunge, I had the opportunity. I've been to the plunge many times, but I really got to see what goes behind all the classes and everything. So I learned that they actually have to have around 60 to 100 lifeguards, all of which must be CPR, first aid, and lifeguard certified, which I was very impressed with managing that amount of staff. They also have swim classes that are actually so competitive to get into that they have to have a lottery just to get in, which is exciting to see residents of El Segundo interested in our classes. Going back to Rec Park, I did not know a lot about this area, but I was very fascinated by it. We have the family camp out, which is when families camp out and hang out at the Rec Park. And I think that was a great opportunity for me to really get to know the staff and realize how much effort events like this take, but also watching it pay off when the community got together and was so grateful for this event. Lastly, I got to tour Farmers Market, which is run by Keisha Stanton, and she was kind enough to take me on a tour of Farmers Market and help me understand how many booths they would have in a typical week and what goes into having a booth set up. And she also let me promote my own personal events that I was having at the manager's booth. One thing I found interesting was the age diversity, in which it is truly a place for all ages, although there's vegetable stands for families to enjoy. They also had arts and crafts activities for young kids, which I thought was a very inclusive way. So, like I said, as well as visiting the facilities, I also wanted to plan my own events. So I hosted the first ever Teen Center Art Show, which presented an opportunity for young artists to showcase their work. I decided to limit the show to just residents and locals of the South Bay, residents of El Segundo, and I think that presented a great opportunity for young artists who maybe don't get their art showcased as often to have this great opportunities for locals to see their work. And in addition, I think it was great for adults and kids who may not get to see what the Teen Center is like all the time to really get to experience what the Teen Center is all about and see it in a full experience. I got to facilitate a partnership with the El Segundo Museum of Art as well as the El Segundo Public Library, and they were kind enough to set up booths as well as talk about the events they're having. So all the attendees got to know what was going on at SMOA and the library. So we did not have a lot of time to set up this. The first aspect was I created a meeting with SMOA, and I think that gave me the first perspective on learning what goes into planning an event. I also facilitated my partnership with the El Segundo Public Library, and they were kind enough to donate 35 of their own books to an activity that was very popular at the Teen Center Art Show. That was very kind of them. Another aspect was also confirming the artists. We wanted to limit it to young adult artists. But I was very impressed by the wide range of submissions that we received. It was anywhere from we got poetry, photography, pastel drawing. We even had a podcast host come and talk about her podcast, which I thought was very impressive. And then lastly was the promotional aspect and advertisement. Mickey Taggle was kind enough to help me with that aspect. She sent emails to all the city staff, and she posted it on the Facebook page, which I'm very thankful for. I also worked with the principal, Dr. Hahn, and she was able to promote it to the high school. So in result, we got around 50 to 70 attendees, and 13 local artists ranging from ages 14 to 20, which I thought was a great age range considering we were limiting the artists to only young adults. So the younger artists had older adults to look up to that were still locals and residents of El Segundo. And we also set up ping pong and air hockey and refreshments just so people who came could see what the teen center would be like on a normal day-to-day basis and get the full experience. I would love to in the future plan this again, this art show. Some future goals we would have would obviously just be earlier planning so we could have more advertisement and just spread the word more. Also, I think a benefit of partnering with SMOA as well as the El Segundo Public Library was that the SMOA and El Segundo Library got to talk about their events and what they're up to. And I think that would be a great opportunity for the high school to get involved with as well. So if any teens that come, they can see like events going on at the El Segundo High School, and such as art programs, because El Segundo just does have a great art program from like ceramics classes to photography, that if we were able to promote that through the teen center and get more kids involved, I think that would be a great asset. And I also just diversifying the age groups. Although we had a great amount of attendees come, I think that I would be interested in finding more ways to have kids and older adults come more than just teens. So my next activity was the Back to School Carnival, which was a one-time drop-in activity where students came and they played board games and won tickets. And I was just, we had about 100 to 115 kids show up, which was very exciting. I think one of my favorite assets about this is we had student volunteers ranging from ages 12 to 15 come and help out with the events. But when you have volunteers at that age, they really provide a great insight and can engage with the kids on their experience with the middle school and any back to school advice they have. And they really just connected with the kids at a great level. In addition, I love the age range that this was able to apply to. I saw children ages 5 with their parents playing, and then I also saw 12 and 13-year-olds all enjoying on the same level. Some of my work at the library, most of that was focused on trying to find events that teens would be able to be interested in, because teens are the hardest age group to get involved into activities and clubs. So I worked with my supervisor, Katrina Woodson, to help research what activities would be the most popular, most interesting, and appeal to the young adult age category. And with that, we planned the teen club programs, including vision boards, escape room, slime. Lastly, the El Segundo Women's Club was kind enough to donate a brand new e-reader to the library. So I designed, this is probably the most independent project I worked on. I didn't have a lot of, it was kind of just created all by me. I created the guidelines for a e-reader giveaway contest where students of El Segundo Middle School and El Segundo High School can submit their work for a chance to win this e-reader. It's currently in the process of being sent out. We have the flyers and the guidelines already created. And then lastly, I wanted to continue my research topic on finding ways to what would appeal most to teenagers and what their interests are and what clubs and activities they would be interested in. So I developed a 10-question survey ranging usually multiple choice and short answer. And these questions are just aimed to get a better idea of what teens are already using the library for, what they like best, what they dislike, and how we can just bring more kids involved, which was a very important topic. So the Civic Day internship was the first of its kind, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. It was actually my very first professional work environment where I got to attend meetings and I got to plan and facilitate events. I really understood just how much dedication and effort it takes to plan events, which I very appreciate. And I just got to meet all the El Segundo staff. I've grown up here. I've lived here since I was a kid, and it was very cool to be part of the events that I would participate in when I was a kid and see really the effort that goes into it. At this time, I would like to thank Greg Carpenter for giving me this opportunity, as well as Mickey Tagle for helping me along the way, especially the promotional aspects. And I'd like to thank my supervisors, Katrina Woodson, Shauna Hunter, and Sean Green for helping me out with everything. Thank you so much.
I think we need it. Yeah. Hey, don't go anywhere. That was incredible, Catherine. Seriously. So what are you going to study at Oregon?
I'm a psychology major.
Okay. So really insightful. I actually learned some things that I didn't know about the different recreation programs. Thank you for all the work you put into this. We are the city where big ideas take off, and I love the ideas.
Thank you.
I mean, really, they like outreach with the teens. I think it's great. On the library survey, did you complete that? I'm just curious what you learned from the teens in terms of what they're looking for at the library, what's changing.
So I got it completed and approved by the library, and currently we're just in the process of getting it sent to the students. I think I ran with that idea because I remember as a student getting these surveys, and I just kind of thought, like, if I could just email this to like all the students at the high school, that would be such a great input, you know? And it's it's not hard, it's just 10 questions, but it would provide a lot of insight and really help us out.
So we can still do that, Greg? Great. And I just want to commend actually Mayor Suzanne Fuentes, past mayor, because she was really passionate about bringing this program back. It was a great program. Were you here for the Civic Day where we were all up here at the dais and everything for that actual day of interaction? Oh, okay. That's all right. Anyway, yeah, it was an incredible event, and anything we can do to get younger people involved in civic government is great. So that's awesome. Thank you. Any other comments, council?
If every 18-year-old coming out of El Segundo High School can speak like you and understand things the way you do, I think we're doing something right over there, because I just celebrated my 20-year class reunion, and I can honestly say that I never would have been able to do what you just did.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Katherine.
Thank you.
City Council.
All right, before we do roll call,
Before we do roll call, we're going to whisper. Kidding, we're whispering with each other.
all right, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Nickel,
Here.
Councilmember Pimentel,
Here.
Councilmember Brand,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Persick,
Here.
and Mayor Boyles.
Here. Okay, we have public communications, 5-minute limit per person, 30-minute limit total, and I would also add that the first two orders of business relate to a public hearing on Smoky Hollow, the specific plan for Smoky Hollow, as well as the parking and lieu fee for Smoky Hollow. And I'm going to be stepping out. It's actually Councilman Nickel and I will be stepping out on that. So,
Mayor, are you going to handle public communications?
well, no, that's what I'm getting to. Give me 1 second here. I didn't know if, as a result of the public hearing, if the mayor pro tem wanted to do comments then and do separate public communications, or if it doesn't matter because it's one right before the other. I guess it doesn't matter, right?
Actually, I believe the public hearing got closed last time. We did? Okay. So then it would occur with the
Okay.
items.
So now is the time for public communications not specific to the Smoky Hollow specific plan. Feel free to step up to the podium. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Do you want my bottle? I didn't drink out of it.
Hi, my name is Kathy Benudis. I'm a longtime El Segundo resident, not a public speaker. This will be my first time, certainly, in speaking in front of a council.
Thank you.
I'm not a speechwriter, speech maker. I don't have a prepared speech. I want to share some of my concerns about what is happening with the council. Not that it is specific to this specific council. It has been brewing for quite some time. But after having our water bill automatically raised simply because people possibly didn't get the right, the quote-unquote ballot and weren't turning them in, now all of a sudden our water rates get raised whenever you guys deem feasible, or maybe once a year or once every 2 years, I don't know. But I think it's underhanded, it's disingenuous, and it's dishonest way to do business. We elect the members of the council to benefit this town and its residents, not to do detrimental things that affect the residents badly. Just because somebody up in Sacramento or a group of people in Sacramento decided Prop 218 was an okay way to do business doesn't mean El Segundo council members should use that as an excuse to try and get things moved through that basically they know darn well the residents don't want. That is the only thing that I can think of for reasoning behind doing that. Because I don't think you can guarantee that everybody that is a resident and property owner of this town actually gets one of those ballots in a timely manner and has the opportunity to respond to get their vote out. And quite frankly, I think when things like this come before the public or the residents of this town, everybody should have the right to vote yes or no, not simply say, no, I don't want this. I want to be able to vote yes or no on something that affects me and every other resident in this town, including tenants that are renting that may not, the owner of the homes that they're renting may not care whether the water rates are being paid, trash being paid by the residents who already pay taxes to pay for the trash pickup. So we're going to be double billed if not enough people respond to this. We're going to be paying twice for trash pickup, and that's just wrong. Now, I'm trying not to get angry, but as I said, I think this is just a dishonest way of doing business. Now, to move on from that, budget. I have heard many comments from people saying, you know, people asking the question of why do we have to pay six-figure salaries to city employees? Oh, well, we have to do that to get the best people. If that's the case, then why are we very frequently hiring consultants and consulting firms to get the job done that these very well-paid employees should be able to do? And I'd like to know exactly what are the requirements to be hired in for these six-figure salaries, because, hey, I might like to apply for one. That's a lot of money, especially when they, in turn around and hire outside consultants to help them do their job. Okay? Next topic. I have the utmost, pardon?
Your time is up.
Okay. Thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
time.
We do have public communications at the end of council too. And you can reach me anytime, email dboyles@elsegundo.org. And after we wrap up public comments, Greg, I just want to clear the record on a couple points that were made that were not accurate in terms of whether or not we pay for trash as part of our property tax and the intent of Prop 218 and why we choose to use consultants as opposed to locking ourselves into long-term employee contractual agreements with PERS expenses and other long-term benefits. So at the end of the comments, we'll get to those, okay? Thank you. Any other public communications?
Good evening, Paul Lanier, 518 Whiting Street. I'm actually going to read to you a little note that Melissa McCaverty emailed to you this evening, and I don't think you've had a chance to see it. Dear Mayor Boyles and City Council members, I am writing this letter in support of the Council passing the proposed social host ordinance. As you're aware, this issue has been on the agenda since May. You asked that the members of the community assist Chief Whalen in drafting better language. Members of the community did as you asked, and I think the Chief was pretty eloquent when he came up and spoke about it in a prior meeting. I'm not sure it was the last meeting, but maybe the one before. You asked that members of the community host a forum to gauge the temperature of the community. The volunteers hosted such an event. Then last month, the item was pulled off because of a full agenda, which I understand, and it's back on the agenda tonight. I have to say, this is for myself and for Melissa. As much as I like Councilman Pimentel as a person, we disagree with the op-ed article that he wrote and published in the Herald recently. This is not a Norman Rockwell town. We have issues. I liken this to, well, do we need a seatbelt law? Are you intruding in my car to make me put my kid in a safety belt? Maybe it's not the best argument, but regardless, you asked us, we did the work. The city attorney weighed in as well. So we ask that you consider a broad spectrum of people and consider passing this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Congrats on your recent publish in the Points Guy.
Thank you.
You fly too much, young man. Yeah, please.
Okie dokie. Good evening. My name is Paulette Caudell, and I live at 531 Arena Street, El Segundo, and I'm president of the Road Committee, Reach Out Against Drugs. And I'm here to strongly recommend that you approve the social host ordinance tonight. Some of our concerns are that as the other beach cities approve their social host ordinances, that then parties are pushed into El Segundo. That's one. This ordinance is aimed at large parties where underage drinking is going on. This is not about grabbing some fellow who's minding his own business off his front porch for drinking a beer. This is not about preventing parents from allowing their children to consume alcohol under their supervision. We just want to be sure that they don't serve our children without our knowledge or our consent. This ordinance also covers marijuana, and it is true that alcohol consumption is on the decline, but marijuana consumption is on the increase among teens. The ordinance is meant to serve as a tool to assist parents, law enforcement, and the kids to stay away from underage drinking. It opens up the dialogue between teens and their children about their values around alcohol consumption. It's a dialogue that needs to be had. The present laws on the books criminalize serving alcohol to minors. We thought that an ordinance would soften this and a fine would serve better to promote our hometown values. There are many reasons to vote yes, and we hope you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Caudell.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Barbara Briney, and I live in the 500 block of Nevada Street. I'm here tonight to encourage you to approve consent agenda item 11, which is the agreements that took place between the city and the school district in regards to the aquatic center. I have to tell you that I'm here mostly to thank you for this taking place. It has been 15 years that we have worked tirelessly to make sure that the kids in our community have a decent place to swim. We love the plunge. We want to see it continue. We have devoted our time and our money to make sure that happens. But we also want them to have a facility that's clean and new and in every way what they deserve. We've had a rich aquatics history here in El Segundo. We are most grateful for the example that was set by everyone before us, and we're grateful for your insight and your wisdom in pursuing this and continuing this for the rest of the community for many, many years to come. So we're grateful again. Thank you for your help. We look forward to the 29th when hopefully somebody's going in the water. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Briney.
Good evening. My name is Mark Greener. I've been absent for probably a year or so, but I've been coming to city council meetings since the early 90s. Some people may recognize me. My appearance changes from time to time, but I'm here to talk about, but I have kept track of what's been going on with the city. A couple of people have made some mentions of things that are going on, especially the trash issue. I've been reading about how the concern is of the city on finances. I love the word underfunded pensions and money that's going on. There's a difference between underfunded and unsustainable. And the word unsustainable has been used in front of this council since the 90s. It's interesting. I'm going to try and do this real quick. I came across some letters that actually that have to do with the pensions, the money, and the trash. And I'm going to try and read it real quick if I can, so I don't run out of time. El Segundo is facing a crisis right now today. The crisis has manifested itself over a decade. Today, the two main players of this financial situation, the fire union and the police officers union, are key to our problem. The council's answer is to increase taxes and fees and give it to the organizations that got us here in the first place. The main complaint that reducing their six-figure salaries to save the city is too much too soon. I don't remember concerns being expressed about the future financial stability of El Segundo when these outrageous pays and pension contracts were being negotiated. Now, I'm just reading this. There's the usual tactic by reducing the staff of police and fire will put the people of El Segundo in peril. If the staffing were at minimum levels, I might agree, but the reduction of a few in a department that is over 3 times that of other communities, I could say there's things that I could question on this. If the unions were concerned about the safety people, then why are these senior union members so opposed to taking reductions to save their own members? A reduction of these top earners could save the firing of others. So much for union loyalty. If this is how these two departments watch out for their own, what can we expect the people of El Segundo? I want the pride of an El Segundo Police Department and Fire Department, not local union officials who dictate city policy. Here's another one. Trash fee issues need scrutiny. I find exception to the City of Bell version of trash fees for El Segundo to generate desperately needed funds, especially when Councilman Don Braun wants it to be diverted to maintain financially overbudgeted police and fire departments. Like I say, I'm reading this letter that was printed in the Herald. I do take exception on how they plan to implement and the manipulation. Everyone I know objected to the water increase, yet the city claimed the 50% plus one objection required was not met. How do we know that every form was delivered? How do we know the individuals who make the decisions, especially a business, received it? How do we know that the return forms were delivered? Is this to become the new backbone of deal and circumvention, the true will of the people? Instead, why don't you send out these forms and state, if you do not want to be charged a monthly fee for trash services, just send this form back, and if the amount returned for the form exceeds 50% of the form sent out, then the trash fee will go into effect. It appears that we no longer live in a true democracy. If we did send out these forms, it would have a true choice. The American way would be check one. 1, I do want to be charged for trash fee. 2, I do not want to be charged a trash fee. And when the return forms are counted, the majority wins, not some concocted formula of the total percentage of returns. If this is the change our society is getting from our representatives, how about for the next election, we use your formula? We will send forms to the following 10,781 registered voters. If you do not want Councilman Don Braun or the mayor removed from office, return this form. And if the city receives more than half, 5,391 of the 10,781 voters, they get to stay. Otherwise, you're out of here. In case you need a reminder, the total voter turnout in the last election was 3,538. Now, this kind of hits off what's been talked about here for the past few months, but I'd like to point out that these letters were written 8 years ago. The exact same thing is raising its head. And I am aware of what the Prop 218 is, and people still ask me what it is. And I know that Prop 218 was created by Sacramento to offset Prop 13 that was created, and it's been altered quite a few times. But the council up here has voted to raise...
Time is up.
Sorry, I wish I could talk more.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Boyles, City Council, City Manager, and City Attorney. I'm Melissa Moore, the Superintendent of El Segundo Unified School District, and I'm here enthusiastically in support of the joint agreement, item 11, for aquatic center programming and plunge restoration. September 11th, our Board of Education for El Segundo Unified School District unanimously approved these agreements. And it's been a long road. It's been a long road for aquatics. I believe our community has been very patient in waiting for a positive outcome for both parties. And I believe this joint agreement truly reflects that. We appreciate the council's time to meet with the Board of Education on 2 occasions to arrive at this decision. And I, on behalf of the board, express our enthusiastic support for that item. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. You've been very patient.
I tried
Thank
to.
you. You were the
Thank
first
you guys.
one up initially.
I tried to, yeah, right. Thank you, Council, for hearing my voice tonight. I wanted to come out tonight and thank you guys personally in public and just let everyone know that on the 8th of September, a few weekends ago, the El Segundo cross country team hosted a successful event at the lakes. I thank you guys for supporting the vision and for trusting in the process and allowing us to host such an event. Quick highlights: we hosted over 1,100 runners, approximately just as many guests as well. This could not have been done without your guys' support and accommodations of a beautiful public facility. I'd like to thank just a few people before I get out of here, and I know you guys are very busy, so I'll keep it short and sweet. I'd like to thank Meredith Petit, Sean Green, and Jackie Day at the Parks and Rec Department for approaching me initially and for helping me out through this entire process. Without them, could not have gotten this done. Scott Morgan at the Lakes. Scott stayed there, just a little insight. We stayed there until about midnight the night before, getting everything ready, pitch dark, posting up poles and everything. It was insane, but it was amazing. The City Council, thank you so much for you guys for accommodating it. El Segundo staff, Steve Severland, Patricia Guzman, for helping me with all the paperwork, Dr. Jen and Sam Salama for volunteering the day of, ESPD for coming out to several meetings, helping us with traffic and crowd control, Public Works, Beto Moreno and his staff for coming out with all the different cones and barriers and signs and all the things that we need to get done. Let's see what else. The NCL, National Charity League Beachside Chapter for volunteering 20 people just out of nowhere just to help out. Greg McMullen at the Herald and Truman Heading at the egundo.com for getting the word out. Julie Stolnak and the El Segundo Rotary Club for sending volunteers as well. As you can tell, I could keep going on and on and on. We had over 50 parent volunteers. This was a true testament to how amazing our city can be when we work together. So kind of dovetailing on what the Little League groups were saying and some of the words that you guys had echoed there. I appreciate everything that you guys did for us. And I think it was one of my great moments in my professional career. Having been here for 10 years, it really shows everything that El Segundo is all about. So thank you guys for your help. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach. How did El Segundo do?
The girls took first place.
Nice. That's what I thought.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, that concludes public comments. As I mentioned, Greg, I would love you to give a little background on Prop 218, which is sponsored by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, and some of the history there. And also a couple comments. One is we don't pay for trash as part of our property taxes. And the unique thing about our city that really sets us apart from the other 87 cities in LA County is that 95% plus of this town's revenue, which I'm sure you know, comes from business, not residential property taxes. That is a unique attribute of El Segundo post-Prop 13. As a result, we have to do everything we can to ensure that business thrives here while still maintaining the charm of El Segundo and balancing all the expenses and costs we have. This is the first council on record under Dr. Brand's leadership to proactively address pension liabilities. This year alone, in the last month, we set aside $1.5 million to address negative amortization pension line items. First time under Joe Lilio Finance Department's Finance Director's leadership. We also set aside $1 million for a pension trust fund to pay down future pension liabilities. We also told the city staff there will be no additional headcount unless offsets are found elsewhere. and many other things that we've done to address not only the capital improvement projects that we have, of which there are many, and we have the healthiest economic financial reserve this city has ever had in its history in absolute dollars and as a percent of revenue. So as fiduciaries of this city, we're absolutely being stewards of finances. So I take exception to some of those comments that were made earlier. And let's see if there's anything else I want to address here. Regarding fire and police, they do make six figures. And we just found out recently that both police and fire, based on surveys that we did, that we validated, are under market relative to their peer groups in other cities close by, like it or not, fact. What else? I think that's all I had on that front. Anything to add in terms of Prop 218 or the trash decision there? Water potentially?
Well, we'll have Mark speak to the 218 process and why we use it. It's probably worth noting that the trash ballots are going to go out in the mail this week. Those will arrive at properties throughout the city, and people have the opportunity to indicate their opposition to the trash fees and return those to the city. And that's part of the 218 process. Mark can explain why we use that process.
Yes, Mayor and Council, as the Mayor pointed out, this was actually a ballot measure back in 1995 that was placed on the ballot by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. And so this was not a bill or ballot measure that was written by the legislature. It was actually written by what is considered sort of an anti-tax group, if you will. And the Prop 218 set forth three different sets of rules, one with regard to taxes, one with regard to assessments, and one with regard to fees. And what the public was speaking tonight about was fees, and that's water fees, trash fees, and under Prop 218, and this was written again by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, the process that was set forth was that it would be a majority protest process. That is, that the public or the residents would have the right to protest, and if a majority protest was received, then a city council could not impose a new fee or increase. And so this process that we used is mandated by the Constitution. It's not something the city of El Segundo made up. And in fact, we, as staff through the years, have refined the policy and the process, and we aren't required to send out protest ballots and the information, as much information as we do, but that's done to be transparent. We include envelopes. I think the city makes it about as easy as it can to protest the proposed fees. Now, I understand people don't want them, but I'm saying from a process point of view, the city is very proactive in trying to notify people and give them an opportunity to protest. And both with regard to water and wastewater, both the tenants and the tenants' customers and the property owners get the notices and the ability to protest. And with the trash, unfortunately, we don't know who the customers are. We only know property owners, and so this original round is only going to property owners because we don't have a list of customers. So be happy to answer any other questions you have.
Does the council have any questions?
Is there any other option other than going to the Prop 218?
Not if you want to impose a new fee or increase a fee.
So we can't, as a council, say, hey, we want this on the ballot, the general election. I just want to make sure I'm answering the question for the person in public comment is, are we using the Prop 218 as a underhanded tool, or is it the only...
It's the mandated
the
process.
only method.
It is the mandated process. I suppose you could go through the process and then you could go through another vote on top of that if you wanted to, but you would at least initially need to do this protest process. You could overlay another process on it, but I would strongly recommend you adhere to the process that's set forth in the Constitution.
So if these residents take issue with the Prop 218 process, can they write a letter to their state assembly person? How would they go about protesting that?
Well, to amend Prop 218, it would need to be amended through another ballot measure. And so really contact the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. They're still very active.
Thank you.
Just to another point of another fact, only one other city in all 88 cities in LA County does not pass on solid waste trash cost. I believe that's the City of Commerce, is it not? Yeah. Okay, I was talking about LA County, but yeah, San Diego as well. All right, then the other point was about consulting fees. Again, I alluded to this, but when we can, we like to use consulting fees in lieu of making hires, which often become more permanent in nature and have much more pension-related benefits and costs and liabilities for the city. So I think we addressed all the concerns in public communications. All right. We're going to move on to, that closes public communications, seeing no more, and we're going to move on to item number 1 and 2, so Councilman Nickel and I will excuse ourselves. Thank you.
Consolidated here. Item 11 pertains to Smoky Hollow.
The issue is that we have a item to increase a consultant's contract in order to finish this project, and I think it would be appropriate for council to vote on it now. Vote on it with these items as well.
So just the three of us, okay.
Which item is that? That's on 11.
It's not 11. Which one is it?
Do them
Isn't,
this one.
you know, I don't know why I got this weird.
Just a correction, it's not item 11 that we will include with this, it's item 13. 13, yes, sir. The MIG contract amendment.
Okay, ready? Okay, so we're starting back up. This is the time and place to hear to fix for a public hearing. This item continued from, did you read the whole thing? My glasses on.
Before we go on, we need to vote on procedural motions so that you can actually proceed tonight. They left the dais before they voted on.
Oh. So can we take a motion for procedural motions to
So
be?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All right. All right. So this is the time and place herein to fix for a public hearing. This item is continued from August 21st, 2018 City Council meeting. Consideration and possible action regarding environmental assessment number EA 1011, general plan amendment number GPA 1301, zone change numbers ZC 13-01, and zone text amendment number ZTA 1301 for the Smoky Hollow specific plan update project. Address Smoky Hollow. Applicant City of El Segundo, fiscal impact none. City Clerk, was proper notice of the hearing given in a timely manner?
Yes, it was.
City Clerk, has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
Yes, 2 items and you received them.
Okay. The public hearing is now open. Mr. Carpenter, who will make the presentation?
Mayor Pro Tem Council, Greg McLean, our planning manager, will provide this presentation. If you recall, we had a public hearing. I think we've narrowed the issues, so Greg is going to focus on those last remaining issues and some options for council to consider.
So just for clarification, those 3 issues are the housing overlay in the north side, the parking on El Segundo Boulevard, and the height variance, of building height variance, correct? There is no other issues that the council wanted to address? Were those the 3?
I addressed in meeting with staff the issue of community benefits, which they've responded to, so
okay.
I want to cover that.
So those are the 4 things we'd like to cover today.
So I'm going to focus on the 3 main items that were brought up in the last meeting. The community benefits, I do have a slide on that as well.
Okay,
so
perfect.
We'll cover everything. Okay. So just to recap, we're going to address the medium density residential overlay. We're going to address parking on El Segundo Boulevard and then building height limits. So let's start with the medium density residential overlay. The overlay is shown on this map. Currently it's in 2 parts. The left and the right with the red outline are unactivated parts. They're still holding their commercial zone, but they have this overlay. And the part in the middle that's brown is activated, so those are already residential. As part of the specific plan process, we are proposing through the ordinance that we've given you to rezone the brown part that's already been activated to R3. The development standards in MDR and R3 are remarkably similar. There's very few differences, so it doesn't make sense to have two zones that do nearly identical work. And pursuant to the direction that we received from the council based on comments from the public, we are no longer proposing to remove the overlay from the remaining 4 blocks, which are 2 block segments over here. These are Nevada Street, I believe, and 2 over here. This is between Kansas and Oregon, I believe, and I think it's California. No, it's Washington that goes up between the middle. So we're not going to. We've amended the ordinance that we prepared for you. We're not taking the overlay out any longer. We are going to make some slight fixes, but at first I wanted to give a little bit of background. Smoky Hollow contains no provisions for residential, so it just makes sense, and it made sense to us 2 years ago when we were making these decisions to take the residential component away. That was the impetus for removing the overlay. We understand the circumstances have changed, and we've made the necessary changes to put it back. But we will be coming back in the near future with a little bit of an overhaul of that chapter, because it contains links to old policies and goals that are being replaced with a new specific plan. It does unfortunately have some very ambiguous language that makes it very difficult to understand how to implement. We'll fix that. And as I mentioned, it's already very similar to R3, so I'm going to realign the development standards to R3, and then if possible, we'll create the process that if it is activated, it will just become R3. And then it will be ejected from the Smoky Hollow plan. So we'll see if we can work that out. So that's the plan. So in a nutshell, we're not removing the overlay, and I'm going to come back to you in a few months with a revised overlay that will do all of the things that the overlay does currently, and then a little bit more, and do it better and more efficiently. Yeah. Okay. So I hope we've addressed the council's will on that issue. So moving on.
Do you want to take, is there any issue, concerns?
I'm good with what you're saying here.
Thank you. I will add one additional.
I'm incredibly sensitive to how annoying it is when the good idea fairy shows up at the very end of your program and sprinkles magic dust on it. Yeah. And I know what a hassle it was to come up with a plan to work around that. So thank you very much. That certainly satisfied me, and it sounds like it satisfied Dr. Brand as well.
Well, thank you for those comments. We are, if nothing, adaptable because we have to be. So I would like to also point that I have heard, and probably more from the Planning Commission than from the Council, there's a desire for us to look at the idea of live-work in Smoky Hollow, or at the very least revisiting the maximum size of the caretaker unit. So we will do that as well. I just wanted to let you know that that's also on the agenda. So moving on to parking on El Segundo. The concerns that I heard primarily are concerning the hill, which is near Center Street. If you're to the west of that hill, wanting to make a left turn, you have to contend with cars popping over that street at a high rate. Traffic speed has always been our number one concern there. And then related to just the configuration of the buildings and how close they are to El Segundo Boulevard, there's a little bit of an issue of line of sight. So our belief is that traffic speed is the #1 problem, and that if we address traffic speed, we'll get a better line of sight issue, because when a car's coming at you a little bit slower, you don't have to see it quite so far in the distance to react to it. As for the hill, we don't have a solution at this time, but I've talked to the Public Works Director. We will study the possibility of possibly putting a light or stop sign there. There's a process for that, and we didn't write that into the Smoky Hollow plan, but now that we're aware of it, we'll discuss this with Public Works in the future. So narrowing lanes. We know from decades now of studies from all over the world that narrowing lanes actually reduces speeds. Drivers drive slower when they have a more narrow lane to drive in. And I'm going to skip ahead one slide here. This is just a nice graphic that I found. This one was in your report. I converted the metric to feet for your report, but I left it intact. But this illustrates the findings of all these studies that have been done over the years. This represents a 9-foot lane width, and this is a 10-foot lane width. This is considered to be the ideal. These two, 11 and 12, are what we have on El Segundo Boulevard in Smoky Hollow area. 12 is correlated with a very high rate of fatalities. I don't know if we're seeing fatalities in El Segundo, but just as a measure of the degree of danger, I guess, or unsafeness. The wider the lane, the more dangerous it becomes, and it's a factor of speed. So we all recognize that El Segundo Boulevard is a difficult street to make a left turn onto, and one way of solving this is to narrow the lanes and get people to drive slower. So going back to this other slide, the way we're proposing to do this is through a pilot program. We'll start on the west side. We'll take a certain number of blocks, and we'll temporarily implement what we're proposing here. We'll narrow the lanes. We'll provide parking on the side, on the north side. And we'll use that as an opportunity to affirm that the assumptions and the planning that we put into this works. If there's anything wrong, we'll make adjustments. And if it just doesn't improve the safety, then we can just undo the whole thing. Okay? We're confident that it will improve safety, and it won't hinder the visibility of people trying to make the left turn onto El Segundo Boulevard, and this will be a way to demonstrate that. So that's the plan. And then, as I mentioned, we'll discuss the possibility of doing something about Center Street, because that's near the crest of the hill if it's not right at the hill. Okay, so.
So real quick then,
yes.
Council, are we?
Right. The narrowing of the lanes, there's 4 lanes there.
Yes.
But only 3 of them are going to be narrowed, and the lane that's the furthest south will not be, and the justification for that is because of the truck traffic coming out of Chevron?
Yeah, that's correct. That lane is 12 feet now, and a truck that's making a right turn out of Chevron doesn't want to cross into opposing traffic. So we want to keep that lane a little bit wide. However, I didn't bring a slide of this, but in your staff report, the supplemental staff report, I did have a picture of Park Place. And what the Public Works Department did there was they just painted a white stripe on the side of the road that psychologically narrowed the lane. It doesn't actually, because the trucks can drive over that line. So it'll serve Chevron's needs because the lane is wide enough for them to turn out, but it will also narrow the lane, at least to the perception of a driver. So we achieve both goals with that.
And then the pilot parking project on the north side of El Segundo Boulevard is how many blocks east of Main?
That's what we'd have to work with Public Works to see what makes sense. We could do 4 blocks, we could do 3 blocks, we could do 6. It's really a question of what would be the most, what would tell us the most, what we would learn the most from, and what would not create a shock to the system, if you will. So that's to be negotiated, I guess.
Those are the best blocks to do the pilot, because that's where we could most use the extra spaces closer to Main Street. And I think in East Smoky Hollow there's other available solutions. Then I'm not okay with parking on El Segundo Boulevard on the north side on the eastern part of Smoky Hollow. So this gives a chance to see if people start to be slowing down to come up to Main Street and pop it in there and take a look at it. Yeah.
Right. That's the direction that we understood, and we think it'll serve our purpose to identify if we're doing it the right way.
So just for clarification, you're going to reduce the lane size regardless of if we put parking or not?
Yeah.
I would recommend that.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because if the goal is to reduce speed, then we should go ahead and reduce the lane size for the whole of El Segundo Boulevard, so that when you do come up to the part where there is parking, it's not just like they're already slowed going into it.
That's right. And I would also mention that by reducing the lane widths of the travel lanes, that allows us to make the parking lane wider, which, you don't want to be in a situation where you're afraid to open your door.
Right.
And the way, at a glance, it looks like we could get that lane to be, maybe even 10 feet wide, which is really quite wide.
Okay. Well, since we met last, I do what I usually do. I walked Smoky Hollow a couple of times to get a feel for this, and It was interesting and changed my point of view to some degree. I'm wondering if to alleviate the need for parking, we could look at the concept of hydraulic lifts to attain some additional parking spaces where that would make sense.
We are ahead of you on that.
Okay.
I've actually already drafted for our consideration an interpretation that says that lifts are effectively tandem, just in a vertical fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of the standards that apply to the lifts, to the tandem would apply to lifts. So we're trying to vet that right now, decide if that's really going to work. And if it does, it will make a path for lifts to be implemented in Smoky Hollow quickly. It won't solve all problems. There are already, I'm aware of, situations where people want to install lifts that exceed what we would allow for tandem. And so that will have to be in a follow-up code amendment. But initially, to the degree that we allow tandem, we're willing to say a lift would serve that function.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we see lifts as a definite part of the future of Smoky Hollow, but also we're getting interest on the east side of town as well.
So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this. I'm remembering that parking up and down El Segundo Boulevard got us 74 spaces. Yeah. And what do you think we have left of those now, eliminating most of the blocks from allowing that? Are we down to 30 spaces or something? We do 3 or 4 of the western blocks?
We'll take a look for
Yeah.
that. A big factor that will determine the number that we can get on each block is going to be the length of the red zone that's just immediately to the left of each
Right.
intersection. I think we'll go conservatively and probably push it out to like 40 feet. But if the speeds are sufficiently slow, we can bring that in all the way down to somewhere close to 20 feet and still be safe. So there may be an opportunity to pick up spaces even above the 74, depending on how it was planned and designed.
Yeah, it's the more you can nose out there, and the additional red gives you that option, the safer you can make that turn east on El Segundo Boulevard, which isn't so good right now.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Right now, that dead lane on the north side is about 5 feet wide, and if we increased it to 10 feet to accommodate parking, that gives you 5 additional feet to creep out without encroaching into the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have some photos that I didn't include in the slideshow, but on some of these streets, the buildings are actually an obstacle that you have to look around. Mm-hmm. And then when you're looking the other way, frequently there's a utility pole there,
yeah.
And it's a menace. It's difficult. Creeping out will allow you to see past those at least.
Some of the walking over there is pretty difficult. Just walking, let alone driving. Yeah. Okay.
We can't solve every problem, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Over time.
Chris,
Okay.
are you good?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Brand entirely, especially on the pacing of using that west side to see exactly how the parking will play out on the east side, or if it's relevant at all.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you.
So moving on, building heights. I wanted to point out that the proposal is to allow up to 50 feet, but the standard, without any consideration of a community benefit, is 35 feet on both sides of Smoky Hollow. Currently, the east side allows 50 feet. Currently, but to get that, you'd have to do a lot consolidation. Now, we haven't had any takers because there's sort of a mismatch between the FAR and lot consolidation doesn't really get you very far. Mm-hmm. But it is there. It's on the books. It's been on the books since '86, I think, that you could get to 50 feet on the east side. Okay. And then last thing I wanted to point out is that the new FAR that we are proposing for especially the east side is only really going to work if we can get that additional height. And as an aside, everybody these days wants high ceilings. And initially it was on the ground floor. Now it's on every floor. Everybody wants high ceilings on every floor. So if we allowed 50 feet, we could have, like 15-foot ceilings on 3 floors. And that's kind of what everybody's coming to ask for these days.
Yeah.
Especially in Smoky Hollow.
I got an education on that here 2 weeks ago, the high ceiling idea. And, of course, that takes more feet in height. And I wasn't aware that was such a big trend in there. One of the things we also talked about is the use of or installation of elevators. and how that could alleviate certain situations. I'm not comfortable going, not having high ceilings and going above 35 feet or going to 4 stories unless it's mandated that there be an elevator. So some people might take that 50 feet or 55, whatever we come up with, and try to push in a 4th floor, which I'm okay with that, but I got to have an elevator with it. If they want to do 3 floors, high ceilings, they can get 3 16s into 48, 50 fits.
Yeah, you have to account for the thickness of the floors too, but yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so moving on from there, to get the 50 feet or anywhere above 35 requires a community benefit plan, and this is the slide to just throw out a couple of ideas that we thought of that would be worth considering when the council, or in certain circumstances, possibly the planning commission, consider these plans. And these are just some ideas. We're sure that somebody's going to come up with another great idea that we hadn't thought of, and the structure of the program is such that those can be considered. So I'm not going to read these. I think that everybody can see what kind of things we're looking for.
These are just examples.
These are just samples, ideas that we had, and some of them came from people who are already planning how to develop their properties, and they're offering certain of these things. And now, I would also say that not all of these are going to be valued the same way, and in different geographical circumstances, something that may not be worth much in one context will be worth a lot more in others. So it's deliberately open-ended for these reasons. Okay. Now, there are still some possible tweaks that could be made, and what we're seeking here is direction from the council on these 3 items in particular, but any other, and it's not necessary that any of these be included, but they could be. So I'll run through these real quick. One of the things that we thought of that would help to keep things under control would be to put a story limit in addition to a height limit. Now, I think if everybody does a high ceiling, 3 is a nice round number, but if they don't want high ceilings, then maybe 4, and so there should be some consideration for that as well. Another would be to limit this to the east side. Currently, we allow 50 feet under certain circumstances on the east side. We could retain that and treat the west side differently and say, no, 35 is your limit there. That's an option. As proposed currently, we're suggesting that we have the same height on both sides. And then the last is to make all height-related community benefit plans subject to council approval. We have a 2-tiered system for community benefits plans that at certain threshold, or below a certain threshold on certain items, it would be a planning commission decision, but certain other things would kick it to the city council. We could say if you want height over 35, or if you want height over 40 or over 45, or whatever number you choose, that just automatically becomes a city council decision. So that's just another consideration. The Planning Commission would still make a recommendation in those cases. And other cases that don't involve height, that involve other certain, community benefits in exchange for maybe FAR or something, maybe if they're really minor and there's only one request, those could still be done by the Planning Commission according to the plan that we have. So those are the 3 outstanding issues that we would seek guidance on. At this point, this is my last slide, so I'll leave that up there. And if you want any of these included or some variation of these, we can make that change prior to the second reading.
Don, any?
Okay, let me answer those. The first bullet, I'm okay with that, but I'm also okay with 4. But that, for me, triggers the elevator. And I guess that's in keeping with federal and state regulations.
And I can concur with that. Chris?
Yeah. I would just ask, what is currently, what is code for that for accessibility? Do we have, if we have things east of PCH where we have a lot of buildings over 3 floors, at what point do we mandate elevators there?
Well, we looked into that, and it's actually immensely complicated. There's a lot of, if it's this or that. Typically with a 4-story building, market forces will dictate an elevator. That's one thing to consider. But we can, through a community benefit process, which functions a lot like a development agreement, we can just require that. That's sort of part of the trade-offs. So that doesn't necessarily have to be written in, but we can. But it can be there as a negotiation point as well. But in most cases, 3 stories will also trigger an elevator, but not in every case. It depends on how internal access is arranged and who has access to the floors and what their function is, and it gets complicated. And I'm not an expert on the building code, so I won't try to go into it much deeper than that.
Mayor Mochem, this is a public hearing item, so I don't know if there's anybody from the public to speak on it, but you probably should invite them up.
At this time? Okay. Okay, so we can open it.
Why don't we finish?
Yeah, let's finish what
our comments before we do that.
Yeah.
Well, the public input should come before you make a final decision.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. So on the second bullet, I don't think we should close off the west side to going above 35 feet. We may not want it to do that going forward, but why take that option out now? We can just not permit it in the future, but I wouldn't close it off. So your second bullet, I wouldn't limit it to the east side of Smoky Hollow. And then the third bullet, I'd want to tap into the staff's expertise about community benefits and what would be appropriate for that particular project. And once that's identified, then I'd like to see it go to the Planning Commission and then come to the council. Because I think, we're the politicians here. We're the ones who get elected, and we need to own these solutions. And I'm afraid if we leave it at a staff level, developers will begin to complain over time, hey, he only had to do a sidewalk and a parkette, and they're asking me to do this, and I'd rather that battle be held up here than in the ranks. So that's my answer to that. I appreciate the list. It's not all inclusive, but it gives people an idea of what some good things could be.
I'm broadly in agreement. I think on item 1, would I want to limit it to 3 stories? I don't think that I have the level of creativity or architectural dexterity to mandate that. But I think with a mind to accessibility, everything we can do to encourage accessible units, I think is well within and worth our while. I don't know if prescribing that in the code and limiting a building that may not, just by the sheer nature of the building itself, be unsuited to it and limit that developer or that owner from doing something interesting with the building. So I tend to be a no on 1, a no on 2. I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Brand. I think those are things that we can make decisions on a case-by-case basis, and there's no reason to take or to constrain ourselves for the future. And I wholeheartedly agree on the last one. I think we have expertise in the staff. We have expertise that come from the Planning Commission. And then ultimately, though, we should not leave them on the hook for decisions that are eventually going to make someone unhappy. So.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to do a public hearing. The public hearing is now open for public input. Anyone who'd like to come speak, please come up now.
Hello, Council.
Hello.
I'm Jay Heschler. I'm on the Planning Commission, but I'm here as a resident tonight. 232 West Oak. I'm also part of Urban Land Institute. I'm a member there, and I'm on the Building Healthy Places Council. And one of the nice things about what we do is we look at community development all over the country. We look at how to make communities better. It's a lot of redevelopment. We act as mentors and guidance for these communities to make their residents healthier. One of the things I'm most excited about Smoky Hollow is the transformation of the human scale. Walkability, multimodal, getting people out of their cars. I mean, we have a gem in this location in the South Bay. I think more so than anywhere else, maybe in Los Angeles. And so the opportunity to be able to bring our residents to the streets, I mean, we see it with the Art Walk, we see it starting to happen with some of the public spaces, the event spaces, helping people get around better. Dr. Brand, you mentioned walking on El Segundo Boulevard is dangerous. It is. There's no sidewalk there. I mean, I see brides and their entourage at some of these event spaces sort of walking in their high heels on El Segundo Boulevard trying to get to this event space, and it's kind of crazy. One of the things that makes it crazy is it's posted 35 miles an hour on El Segundo, but cars go regularly 50 miles an hour or faster all the time. I've seen time and time again that narrowing roads slows cars down. In fact, having parallel parking on streets slows vehicle traffic down. So I think as you look at parking on El Segundo Boulevard, yes, the visibility problems, the sight-of-line issues have to be solved, but it will help slow traffic down. To that end, being able to add space for wider sidewalks, I think rather than trying to cram as much parking on El Segundo, look at bump outs, look at landscaping, look at buffers that help slow traffic down. I think Greg mentioned that some of the buildings are right next to to El Segundo Boulevard. If you do bump outs of landscaping, that actually allows a car to get its nose out and take a look and see, and it's actually a much safer process. So let's definitely look at that. That's it. I just want to tell you how excited I am about the Smoky Hollow plan, and I think it would do really great things for our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Anybody else? Yes.
Good evening. I'm a representative property owner in Smoky Hollow. So tonight's vote is of the utmost importance. So thank you very much for kind of narrowing it down to the most important artifacts. We own a large property on the east side of Smoky Hollow, so selfishly, parking in the street is extremely important to our tenants. In fact, our particular block, El Segundo Boulevard, is a dedication, not even an easement, a dedication. So our building is within a couple feet from El Segundo Boulevard. So we like the idea. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark Tellez. We actually like parking on the east, so we concur with the idea of starting on the west, but we by no means want to axe that out for future development. I don't think that was the decision tonight, right?
No.
Okay. The lifts, Dr. Brand, we're days away from starting a 400-car parking garage. In order to build the garage, we need the FAR. Without the FAR, we can't underwrite the garage. So for public benefit, I'm sure you guys agree, a parking garage in Smoky Hollow is a good thing. So Dr. Brand, we've already considered lifts in the garage, so thank you for bringing that up, and we hope that's put through sometime soon. As far as the height requirement, I think we've all made the conclusion, but I'm going to reiterate it, that it's tough to dangle a rope of you can get a 1.0 FAR, but if you can't build at the height, we can't achieve the FAR. So it's great to see it in paper. Hopefully we can approve that. So thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, Council. My name's Danny Brubaker. I own 3 properties that are along El Segundo Boulevard, and they're mostly on the west side from Penn on. And I agree with people walking on the sidewalks. It is a nightmare. I sit in my office on Standard, and I literally watch people walk sideways as they're walking down. But, you know, I'm turning left a lot on El Segundo, and on the east side, I think the buildings are more of a hindrance. So to say, don't do it there, I think we need that pull-out to be able to do that. And the building height, I'm totally into that. So thanks.
Thank you, Danny. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You jumped up.
Paul Schwartz. I have 2 properties also on El Segundo Boulevard. Also would be in support of the parking proposals that are being presented tonight. One of the things that my family has experienced being so close to El Segundo Boulevard is just the proximity of the building and some of the big loading trucks that come in and out of the alleys. We had an incident years ago where one of the trucks was making a sharp turn, hit a fire hydrant, which ended up flooding the building. So having this space would allow for wider turns to be made and would overall be a great improvement for everybody that's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. One more.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brett Drogman. I have one building in Smoky Hollow as well. I just wanted to say I started developing here 9 years ago, and they said the Smoky Hollow review plan was like 6 months away. That was 9 years ago. But I know it's a really difficult thing, and I greatly appreciate all of the work that's gone into it. For me, the big two issues is just as a designer and someone that's been able to build his dreams here in El Segundo, raising the height limit allows us to do so much more creatively, visually. I mean, it just uncuff us as a designer, as someone that wants to build things in this city. Let's raise the roof, right? And I mean, just the parking, we understand it's going to be something that will take a lot of time to figure out. But just the lifts, it's so easy. Other cities are doing it. As a designer, I think it looks cool. You can incorporate it into your build. So to me, that's a no-brainer. Raise the buildings, and the lifts is something that should be done. So thank you.
Thank you. One more. Dale.
Hi, I'm Dale Ingram, and I am in the process of trying to open up a retail store in Smoky Hollow, a coffee shop, and the walkability, the ability for people to come to my space, and I'm next to a bakery, and we're trying to bring what you guys are trying to envision there already, and parking is so vital to people being able to come. And so I just continue to encourage you guys to look at that in all avenues, in all directions. There's so much cool stuff going on. We're very excited to be part of it, and just keep doing what you're doing. Let's get it approved. It has been a very long time, but I really, really encourage you guys to continue to keep looking at parking at El Segundo. I know it's probably not part of it right now, but the one-way streets, I know there's probably a lot of argument there and stuff like that, but finding parking within those streets, the 100 block and the 200 block, I think is also going to be very important. So thank you guys for everything you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. All right, anybody else? No? May I have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, council discussion. So I know we had some initial discussion about them. I did want to clarify, though, if we do move on the parking to do a test in the west side, we're going to narrow the lanes on the east side as well, and that we are going to allow for some when we narrow the lanes on the east side, are we going to put the excess lanes, the excess space where parking potentially will be in the future, so that we can at least alleviate some of the pop, like when you're driving, making a left turn will alleviate some of that pressure as far as to making a safe left turn?
I think if it's the council's desire, I'd recommend that you direct staff to develop a pilot plan and come back. And we can report on the number of blocks, where they are, the lane reconfigurations, and get direction at that time on that revised plan.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, good with that.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else? Any other discussion? You good?
I want to talk a little bit more about the height issue. 50 feet seems important to people with their projects and current preferences in design. So that brings up the question, would it be better if it was 55 feet or 60 feet? 50 is just a number, and I understand it now better, how it relates to stories and high ceilings. And I don't want to thwart people's creative design ideas, so I'm not sure how we got to that number 50. It's not magic.
Well, it's a good round number.
Yeah.
It could have just as easily been 51 or 52.
Yeah.
But we did study the environmental impacts of 50, which includes the aesthetics and other things. To change that now would probably, beg the question: do we have to go back and adjust the CEQA? I think that the better way to approach this might be to try it at 50, and if we're finding consistent pressure to make it 52 or something, then we just amend it in the future.
If somebody comes in with a project and wants it to be 55, 5 feet over the limit, can they appeal to the Planning Commission to try to get a variance?
It's theoretically possible. It doesn't seem like it would happen in most cases. There are certain findings that have to be made for a variance, and it's usually related to the size, the shape, or the topography of the land. And it's hard to conceive of situations where that would translate into additional height. But also remember that when we did the height measurement ordinance a couple of meetings ago, we established that a sort of a stepped or tiered height could be established on properties. And I do believe that in many cases that will solve people's problems. And we've also eliminated the need to count subterranean and basements, whereas we were counting those before. So with a little bit of adjustment, a little bit of grading, a little more grading, I think most of the problems can be brought to within 50 feet. But if not, then we'll know that within a short time.
With the hills and everything, there's such a variety of locations there. 50 feet looks too high in some spaces and not at all in others. And just walking through there a couple times, I got the sense of that. And I'm glad we came up with a different way to measure height, coming up with an average. I think that's fair. There doesn't appear to be much in the way of height over there now. Very few buildings that you can find. So it is a very exciting area, and it's just a gem, a jewel here that we have, and it's always been a unique space. And through the time of World War II and after, and now it's a unique space in a different way. We're really lucky to have it. I want to make the best out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so before we close discussion, just for clarification, we all agree that we are no on the first bullet, no on the second bullet, and yes on the third bullet, and then add the component about the elevator for any fourth floor development. Or do you want to leave that up to put it under the bullet number 3?
I will follow your direction.
What do you want to do for the elevator component? Because I know you're
well.
No,
I
right?
thought Chris had the right idea there, not for us to try to figure that out, but for the designers and the staff here to figure it out and include one when it's appropriate and not when it's not close that option off.
So kind of embed it in number 3.
And make it a community benefit that might be selected to pertain to that project.
Got it. So we can make the change relative to the third bullet point through one table, I believe, in the specific plan.
Perfect.
It would be an easy change. And we'll try to find the most appropriate place to put a discussion of elevators.
All right. Okay, so that closes, Chris, you good? Closes council discussion. City Attorney will read the resolution by title only.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. First is a resolution that can be adopted this evening. A resolution approving environmental assessment number EA 1011, General Plan Amendment number GPA 13-01, and a comprehensive update of the Smoky Hollow specific plan is ready for adoption.
May I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. City Attorney will read the ordinance by title only.
Yes, an ordinance approving zone change number 13-01 and zone text amendment number ZTA 13-01, amending El Segundo Municipal Code provisions related to the comprehensive update of the Smoky Hollow specific plan is ready for introduction.
Who will introduce the ordinance?
I will.
All right, the second reading and adoption of the ordinance is scheduled for October 2nd, 2018.
Your next item was the...
13?
No, the parking in lieu.
The parking in lieu of?
I'm sorry, the agenda was broken into a number of links tonight, so I'm trying to find the right one.
All right, so do I have to read it? Yeah?
Well, you opened them all up, and why am I... Oh, here it is.
Do you want me to read it?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Okay, so at this time and place, a hearing to fixed for a public hearing. This item is continued from August 21st, 2018. City Council meeting, consideration and possible action regarding City Council approval of environmental assessment number EA1198 and zone text amendment number ZTA 1706 to establish a parking in lieu program in the Smoky Hollow area and adopt a parking in lieu of fee, Address citywide, applicant City of El Segundo, fiscal impact none with this action. City Clerk, was proper notice of this hearing given in timely manner?
Yes, it was.
City Clerk, was any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
None was received.
Okay, the public hearing is now open. Mr. Carpenter, who will make this presentation?
We're here to answer questions on this. I think we covered it pretty well in the last time around, and I don't think Tracy, did they vote on the resolution yet? Not yet. Okay, so we still need a vote on the resolution.
Okay, so then we'll open the public hearing. The public hearing is now open for. Do the public hearing? Yeah. Public hearing is now open for public input. Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Council discussion.
I think clearly we talked that one to death last time.
Yes.
Bored him to death.
What was the amount of money for an in lieu parking space?
It was quite high. It was
27,000
yeah,
or something?
$28,000.
28. Okay.
28 flat? 28.
I think so.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
No, I remember that calculation was the dividend based on the number of spots allowed and what we thought it would cost to stripe those streets. So,
Anything, Don? Okay, City Attorney will read the resolution by title only.
Yes, and again, there's a resolution, add an ordinance. Council, a resolution of the City Council of the City of El Segundo establishing a parking in lieu fee and procedures for payment of such fee is a resolution ready for adoption.
so moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is an ordinance approving environmental assessment number EA-1198 and amending Title 15 of the El Segundo Municipal Code to establish a parking in lieu fee program for the Smoky Hollow specific plan area, and that's ready for introduction.
Who will introduce?
So moved.
Second.
All right, the second reading and adoption of the ordinance is scheduled for October 2nd, 2018.
And then you have consent calendar item 13.
13.
I think they made a first and a second on the first resolution, but they didn't vote on it.
Oh,
What?
we didn't vote on the first resolution? Okay, can we take a vote on the first resolution?
You need that?
Yeah, it was a motion and Brown's second, 3-0 vote.
She says we did it, we did it.
And then you opened and you read the ordinance.
Okay, so we're all good?
You're good.
Okay. All right. So we can call back,
No,
Oh, we
now
have to
you
move.
need that 13. 13 on the consent.
item number 13 on the consent.
So, Mayor Pro Tem, in order to do this additional work, we did amend the contract with the consultants. It's on the consent calendar for approval, but since those two council members still have a conflict, we thought we would ask you to take it out of order, vote on it now, and dispense with it.
All right, do you want me to read it?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, consideration possible action to approve a contract extension through September 30th, 2019, and authorize a budget appropriation of $5,000 related to an ongoing contract for professional services with MIG Inc. for additional traffic analysis as part of the Smoky Hollow Specific Plan Update Project, and authorize the city manager to execute an amendment to the existing agreement with MIG Inc. Fiscal impact $5,000.
We would like council to approve this contract amendment so we can finalize this project.
Any discussion?
No, you ready?
So we'd like.
Yeah, I move that we pass this.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay.
Now we can bring back Scott and Drew.
Lose me for a minute.
We're going to take a quick 3-minute break. We'll come back in 8:56. Number 1.
There was a first and a second, so you just need to vote on the resolution again that I already read.
Okay.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are we done now?
I think we're done. All right. That concludes that piece. All right, we can bring Drew and Mr. Nickel back. See how fast we go? Yeah, we did.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. What do we got next?
Now we're on, oh, sorry, that's your vote.
That's okay.
Number 3.
You're on item 3, sir.
All right, number 3, consideration and possible action regarding the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget, including all city revenues and expenditures. Adoption of resolution approving the 2018-2019 final operating and capital improvement budget and the 2018-2019 appropriations limit. Copies of the fiscal year 2018-2019 preliminary budget can be found in the library, city clerk's office, and on the city's website. Fiscal impact, total revenues, including transfers in of $119,405,893. Total expenditures, including transfers out, of $137,608,498. General fund revenues of $74,465,624. Expenditures, including transfer outs of $79,062,784. City Manager.
Joe Lilly, our Director of Finance, will make this presentation.
All right, good evening, Mayor Boyle, City Council members. I'll try to make this efficient. To start off, the city budget process kicked off with strategic planning with City Council and staff members. This was on June 13th. Then we had 3 budget study sessions, one on July 17th, August 14th, and the latest one on September 4th. During these sessions, staff presented assumptions and estimates that were used to develop the fiscal year 18-19 proposed budget. And on the September 4th meeting, staff presented to council various recommendations regarding the allocation of $7.1 million of undesignated general fund reserves. Staff did present various options, and council gave direction to staff on which items to include in the proposed budget, and these items are in this budget before you, and I will go over those momentarily. So just to recap, beginning fund balance as of October 1st, 2017 was about $15.2 million. Estimated revenues for the current year are about 72.1, expenditures 68.5 million. That leaves a beginning fund balance for the new fiscal year of 18.7. The proposed revenues, which you've seen various times, this has not changed from the last meeting, it's $74,465,624. Proposed expenditures are $79,062,000, and that has changed. Previously, it was at $72,329,000. And again, I'll go over what those items were, and those were provided direction by City Council. That leaves an estimating an ending fund balance at September 30th of 2019 of $14.1 million. Council did give direction to staff to go with a 19% reserve requirement for fiscal year 18-19. So that reserve requirement is $13,952,000, and that leaves about $182,000 still in discretionary funds that will remain there in reserves that council can come back and give direction to staff how to allocate that at a future council meeting. Again, this is the same revenues that you have seen previously, so there's no change there. Total expenditures of $79 million, and again, I'll go over the details here in a minute, what the changes were. So previously, again, we did present a budget of $72.3 million. The new proposed expenditure budget of $79.1. So this is an additional about $6.7 million in expenditures that were added per council direction. And I'm going to refer to Exhibit E, which you all should have in front of you. And I'll go over what those items of that $6.7 million total. So council did give direction to move forward with $3,130,000 in CIP, and the details there are before you in Exhibit E. Department requests, we did move forward per council direction with $1,080,565,000 in department requests. These were all one-time requests. The ongoing requests, council did give direction to staff to find those funds within the existing base budget at that $72 million. So before you, the department requests, the items that have a $0 amount, those were the ones, and I'll give you an example. The city manager, new FTE of economic development coordinator of $128,000 shows in the far right-hand column $0. Those are the items that we did find existing funds in the base budget to fund, and those dollar amounts totaled $317,638 that staff did find existing funds. $87,000 came from licensed permit specialists, leaving it unfilled for next year. $7,000 came from an admin intern from the water department. And the remaining dollars, approximately $190,000, came from a reduction in budgeted vacation, sick, and termination payouts. This was really due to efficiencies that were made in prior MOUs during last year, changing. Yes, Mayor.
Joe, there's a placeholder in the agenda for attachment E, but I don't have a copy of it. I don't think, unless it's.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in the email. Was it section 1, 2, or 3?
Do you see it? Okay, I got a copy now. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe 3 of the council members requested electronic documents. Only 2 council members received.
Yeah, there were
actually
3
hard
parts.
copies.
They were parsed out, so I don't know.
Okay.
I can't find it in there, but maybe it is. I don't know. Just says a placeholder for attachment E. It might have been a separate email to the clerk's point. So, I have the handout now.
Okay, so Mayor, if we start from the top again, it's CIP at $3,130,000. Those were all CIP projects that were approved by City Council on the September 4th meeting. Department requests of $1,080,565. Again, those were approved by City Council. There's an additional $317,638 that's not included in that $1,080,000 that was found in the existing base budget. And again, about $190,000 was taken from reduction in vacation, sick, and term payouts. So we budget on an annual basis approximately $700,000 for those payouts, and that was reduced by $190,000. Those efficiencies were found in the way we have changed some of our payouts in our MOUs to base, using the base pay instead of regular rate of pay. And the EPMC, correct, has also been removed. And that's reducing that by $190,000 is leaving a very thin margin of error there. So we feel that that remaining budget for vacation, sick, and term payouts is right on the money. And then the $86,000 was found by not filling a license permit specialist for next year. We also do have $1.5 million in payments to CalPERS unfunded liabilities that was approved. And then $1 million payment to the Section 115 Pension Trust. So that's the total of the $6.7 million that was added on top of the original budget, expenditure budget from the September 4th date. There was approximately $320,000 in department requests approved by City Council that will not be implemented until ongoing and existing funding sources identified. That's also in your Exhibit E, the second page. So listing of those items, that total of $320,000 are there. Again, so those items will come back before council, and staff will identify where those existing funds came from. So that was, again, that dollar amount is not added onto the budget, the base budget.
Thanks, Joe. Could you clarify how much of the $1,080,565 is one time? I think you said it earlier, as opposed to ongoing recurring expenses.
So the $1,080,565, I believe it was, all of it is one time.
So none of this.
We're just talking about the general fund dollars.
No, but none of this is related to additional headcount then?
No, none of that is related to additional headcount.
Thank you. But then what's the 380,000 roughly that was found of it? So you're saying that we approved the $1,080,565, and then $380,000 of that was found. Is that what you're saying?
317,638.
But that wasn't. We didn't ask that of you, right?
Yes. So those are the ongoing items that council approved.
So is that of the $1,080,000 or in addition to? Is what I'm trying to get at.
So that was found in the existing base budget. So if we go back, just real quick, maybe visual. I don't have it on here. I'm sorry. But the original base budget on the September 4th presentation. Oh, here it is. The $72,329,572. And then staff came before you that there's an additional $7.1 million in undesignated reserves, and we came up with some proposals on how to allocate that. And council gave direction to staff any ongoing requests that were within that department request to take out of that $72,329,000. So that,
I guess fundamentally, did all of what was the additional headcount and ongoing recurring expense number?
317,000.
All of that has been recovered, found elsewhere.
638.
All of that's been found elsewhere.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Now, yes. Now, Mayor, there's an additional. So my bullet point here about midway through the slide. There's an additional 320,557 in ongoing department requests, mainly related to headcount. Those dollars have not been found, so therefore those positions are not going to be filled until staff comes back to City Council saying we found ongoing efficiencies that will fund these requests. And that's itemized in your Exhibit E.
Right, and so so you basically found half the money, approximately half the money that you need to fill the additional head.
That's correct.
So how are you determining which FTEs are brought on first, like from the departments? Like who gets the money?
Or which departments have to find the money? I think. Are you going to the department that made the request and saying, okay, offset this, or are you looking more broadly across the organization?
Right, so that was step A. So the executive team met after that September 4th budget study session, and we had a round table, and we discussed that, come up with efficiencies within your existing budget, and several departments provided those efficiencies, and those were the ones that were included in the budget. The efficiencies that were found with the vacation, sick, and term payouts funded the city manager requests for the economic development coordinator and the deputy city manager upgrade.
So what are next steps to find the 330?
So next steps are the executive team will reconvene, and we meet twice a month, and go over this and see where we can find additional efficiencies.
But for now, it's on hold until those
Correct.
additional. Okay.
Correct. That is correct.
Thank you. I understand now. Thank you.
And we understand that some efficiencies are achieved at a point in time. So there are some things that need to occur before we can report back to council that we've identified those efficiencies. Right. And in the case of the police department, it's really just a matter of we need to get the police chief back in the office and work with him on his budget. And we're hoping that we can find those efficiencies within his existing budget. If we can't, then we'll look at other citywide options for addressing his needs.
And then also for the existing current open head count or FTEs, I mean, maybe there is some reevaluation to determine if those FTEs really need to be filled and can be, those monies can be put into the new headcount that is requested.
Well, then we're also up to 40 vacancies right now. So the other question is, operationally, when are we going to be able to fill all these positions and prioritizing those positions?
Right. But maybe some of those positions don't need to be filled, and we just need newer positions, the new positions that were requested.
Correct. Even if, let's say, all 40, were required to be filled, there's no way we're going to be able to
fill them all.
Physically do that. Correct. Okay. And there was an additional $333,220 in department requests that were not approved by City Council, and some examples of that are the laserfish requests, the request by City Clerk for the kiosk. So those are just some examples that Council did not approve those requests.
Well, just for clarification on the laserfish, we actually moved in under the IT budget.
Correct, but not new dollars.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, and I'm not going to go through slide by slide. We already talked about this, 3.1 million in additional CIP. Touched on this already as well. This is general fund reserve balance. So again, Council gave direction to staff for 19% for 18-19. That's about 13.9 million plus the economic uncertainty reserve of 2 million, leaving a total reserve just under 16 million for next year. Again, we already saw this. This is also in your Exhibit D. It's handed out. This hasn't changed from the last budget study session. These are the special revenue funds. Again, we touched on those last time as well. Any specific questions, please let me know. Enterprise funds, that's the water, wastewater, golf course, and debt service fund. The internal service funds, which is equipment replacement, general liability, workers' comp, and senior housing. And basically, recap, so total revenues for all funds are 119.4 million. Total operating and capital budget for all funds, 137 million. General fund revenues, recap, 74.5. General fund expenditures at 79.1 million. And total CIP, all funds, including carryovers from last year, at 10.5 million. That's in your Exhibit D. Basically, the next step is for City Council to approve the 18-19 operating and capital budget, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Council, have any questions for Joe?
I just want to thank you for all your work and due diligence in presenting this information and trying to find the additional dollars to ensure that we could bring on the additional head. Not the additional head, but the replacement heads.
Dr. Brand?
I want to thank you, Joe, for leading a really effective process again this year. I think it was very well done. These are good times we're in. I was up here for 4 years during the Great Recession. It's a lot more fun right now under these circumstances. We're pretty flush these days. I think my issue with this, and we've talked about this off the side, is we just have some philosophical differences, and I may have them with my colleagues here also, beginning with the reserves, which I feel are excessive and truly are in the neighborhood of 30%. Once the basic reserve is added to the reserve for economic uncertainty, is added to the capital equipment fund, is added to the money that drops out of the budget every year because we don't fill the positions. And I had advocated that be reduced to 15%, and instead the council decided to go the other direction and raise it from 18 to 19%. I have a big problem with that. I voted against 4 of the 6 budgets that have come before me up here, so this isn't new for me. It's just my philosophy that you spend the money to serve the residents and the businesses. You don't hoard the money. my priorities for spending this amount of money here that's been laid out were what I've dubbed the 3 Ps: pensions, pools, and planes. And we've done a wonderful job with the pensions, $2.5 million more now to pay that down. I'm really proud of that, and think it's a very smart way to use such a large amount of money. The pools, there's nothing in here to fix the El Segundo plunge, and I think that should be a priority here now that the other pools are closing in on their opening day. But we didn't use it for that. It stands in front of us as a facility sorely in need of some love. The planes, that's our biggest problem here in town, is our neighbor to the north, LAX. And we still can put together a fund of a couple $1 million to prepare to do battle with them, because that's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day. We can still get interest money on that reserve, but we can use it. Now we're spending $75,000 on a lobbyist, $75,000 on an attorney firm. We've been doing that for a long, long time, and it's not working. And so I would have liked to see us put a lot of money into that, and I hope that we will in the future. So that's why this will be the 5th budget out of 7 I won't be voting in favor of. But thank you very much for your service and the effective way you approach your job. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan.
Scott?
First go at this, it's very interesting. It truly makes you zoom out when you look at the city. You know, coming from the Planning Commission and getting my feet wet with like capital improvement budgets and the projects that were approved, those come through the Planning Commission before they come here to council, and understanding the process of how those capital improvement projects get approved or recommended and then through to council. And I just want to make sure the public knows that this is not easy. Making these decisions is not easy, and trying to see the whole field is not easy. And I think once you see behind Oz's curtain, you take a completely different approach to this city. And so I just want to thank you, Joe, for that, and I want to thank my fellow council people for putting forth the time and effort, because I want to say I think we've all invested 40-plus hours in this individually. But and then, Dawn, to one of your points, you know, this fight against the planes, I'm looking at our proposed general fund revenue for 2018-2019. The largest revenue source is our TOT, which is our transient occupancy tax. I'd have to say one of the complementary factors for that tax revenue being as high as it is the fact that there is the airport next to us. So it's this council person's opinion that the airport has been there for a long, long time, and as much as we need to find a way to communicate with our neighbor, we also have to understand that that neighbor is one of the major driving forces for our #1 tax revenue. But that's all, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Nickel. Anyone else?
I'm broadly in favor of the budget. I will be. I think there are some items here that are unfunded that, even though they have not made the list of where we have found money for them, I think some of those are very clearly critical spots that address critical needs for the city. So I think that we need to be mindful about how we mitigate some of the risks we have by not filling those in the name of efficiency. I mean, we can't be a penny wise and pound foolish, especially when I look at that property room piece. Is something that I think is something that is a real priority for us.
Which one?
The property officer for
oh
the
yeah,
police
please.
department.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a critical vulnerability for us, and I think there's broad reasons to have concern if we don't fill that. I do like that we treated one-time found monies for one-time events, so things that are not recurring expenses. And I certainly do not envy the task of finding efficiencies within government to fund so many of these. And I certainly applaud you and the flexibility of so many of the department heads to go looking for that money. I took issue with a few of our broad equipment expenses, but I think those were well noted, and I won't belabor everyone watching at home with hearing me regale you with stories of the durability of the 76
B-52H is still flying, despite their advanced age, as a metaphor or something to stand against our fire engine. But that not being said, I think that we have a budget that is workable and is something that protects us in the future and gives us some flexibility. I, too, am sensitive about an overly broad or heavy reserve, but I think in the case where we see economic instability in our future and would like some flexibility with which to do things, particularly if we have a disintegrating relationship with our neighbor, I think it's important to have that money there. So that's all I've got.
And I just want to clarify, I too am in favor of the budget, but I just want to make sure it's aware that we did put aside $1 million for the assessment, the facilities assessment, and one of those facilities would be the plunge, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then didn't we put some money aside also for a redesign?
100,000.
100,000.
Okay, thank you very much. So, we need a motion to approve the budget, right? Doesn't sound like there are any changes. Sounds like we have consensus on what was presented.
Also moved.
Mark, hold on.
There's a resolution first, and then there's additional action items.
Okay.
So the resolution would go first. And a resolution adopting the 2018-19 final operating and capital improvement budget and the 2018-19 appropriations limit for the city of El Segundo is ready for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then there are 3 other items that just require a motion. That's to
Can you hold on one second, Mark? Don, did you vote?
You didn't call for the no's yet.
I didn't. Noes?
You call for him? No.
Okay. 4-1, thank you.
Also, before the council for action is approving the general fund reserve policy, approving the economic uncertainty reserve policy, and directing staff to return with updated employee classification and salary schedules. And that's ready for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed?
No.
4-1. All righty.
For clarification, did you lump the general reserve policy with the economic uncertainty reserve policy together?
Items 2, 3, and 4 on the recommended council action were voted on together.
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Good, that feels good. Culmination of a lot of work, as Councilman Nickel pointed out. No unfinished business, no reports. Consent agenda, any pulls? I would like to pull item 9.
10.
10,
11.
11.
Did we get the minutes in 5?
No, I'm pulling those minutes.
She's pulling 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
So
the
we have
council
any other
did-
pulls?
Council did vote on item 13 while you were out of the room. So that's
Okay.
Right.
Great. So do I have a motion to approve items 4, 6, 7, 8, and 12?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay. Item 5. Dr. Brand?
Tracy's pulling that because they're not ready, right?
Okay, so we'll approve those next go around.
They will.
Approve on the budget session ones with the other ones we received. 2 items listed, I pulled one of them.
You pulled August 8th, Tracy?
I pulled the budget session.
Okay, so we need a motion and a second on the August 8th minutes.
So I'll make a motion to approve the August 8th special city council minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, okay. Item, you know what, is it okay to go to item 11 first? Dr. Brand, do you have any objection to that? And then come back to 9 and 10?
Was 10 pulled?
Yes.
Oh. No, I don't care.
Okay. Item 11, consideration and possible action to approve 2 facility use agreements between the city and El Segundo Unified School District for El Segundo Wiseburn Aquatic Center and Urosari Swim Stadium, and approve a joint use agreement between the city and Wiseburn Unified School District for the use and operations of the new El Segundo Wiseburn Aquatic Center. Fiscal Impact Aquatic Center, $400,000 contribution by ESUSD for a 10-year use term, estimated $175,000 annual net operating expense to be paid by city. Design and construction costs $1.8 million by the city, $6 million by Wiseburn Unified School District plus land costs, $6 million by nonprofit South Bay Sports, Health, and Recreation. Urosari, the lesser of 24% or $1 million contribution by ESUSD towards refurbishment costs, with city paying 76% or $3 million. ESUSD receives 10-year use term. City pays for annual operating expenses. There's a lot to cover there. Is that the entire agreement in one paragraph?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay. So, Don, you pulled this one, right?
Right. So a couple questions. The agreement between the City of El Segundo and the Wiseburn Unified School District, I understand that hasn't been approved by the Wiseburn School Board yet. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councilmember Brand, and I was going to add that I received from Wiseburn Unified School District's council on Friday a couple or several proposed changes to that agreement, and we are in discussions about those changes. I don't think that they're consistent with the underlying settlement agreement. The settlement agreement was entered into a number of years ago between El Segundo, City of El Segundo, and Wiseburn Unified School District, and the joint use agreement is just supposed to carry forward the use aspects of that settlement agreement. And there are a couple provisions that we are trying to iron out, and so the request this evening is to, there's a draft of the agreement that's attached, but that the council approve the agreements that authorize revisions to the Wiseburn Unified School District so long as they're consistent with the underlying settlement agreement. And if we cannot resolve those issues in the next week, I suspect we'll probably call a special council meeting and get the council back together for some direction.
Well, I think as a point of order, it would be appropriate for the Wiseburn board to vote on the language, and then it comes here to the city, rather than us to go ahead and vote on this tonight and then hope it works out. I mean, we've waited a long time for this to resolve, and it sounds like it's close, but that there's still some discussion. So I'm not ready to approve that until it's ready. And then secondly, I don't really understand the need for the El Segundo Unified School District to have a joint use agreement with the city around this. This all started in 2011 when I was on the council, and it was obvious that Wiseburn Elementary District was going ahead with their movement to try to unify, and they had made progress with that. I can remember towards the fall of 2011 recusing myself from that topic, even though I was advised I didn't need to at the time, but suggesting before I shut down discussion on it that we come up with something that the city needed rather than come up with a pile of bills from attorneys, because at the end of the day, Wiseburn was going to prevail over the city of El Segundo. It's a school district, it's an agency of the state, it's going to win. And why not get something out of it? At that time, we were advised the plunge was on its last legs. In fact, I got a report on that the first meeting I attended in 2008. It just wasn't going to make it. And so I said, why don't you think about an aquatic center at the site of Wiseburn High, which I'm not sure had even been identified at that point for sure. This goes back 7 or 8 years. So the whole idea was eventually the council here went along with that concept, and did craft an agreement, a settlement agreement with the Wiseburn School District, who was interested in moving ahead with their high school and not getting hung up around tax on the EIR, et cetera, that would just slow things down. And, contributed 2 acres of land approximately and $6 million as the price that they needed to pay to move forward. The city here, the council, took the benefit that they were able to extract from Wiseburn, all on behalf of the El Segundo Unified School District, who needed a good aquatic center because the other one was wrecked. And so the whole idea is this was all to benefit El Segundo Unified. So why we need a facilities use agreement, I don't get it. I don't know why El Segundo Unified School District should pay any money into this project at all. It was never designed for them to pay money into it. I don't have any problem with them paying money into the plunge like part of this item calls for. I think that's appropriate, but I don't know why this agreement's there. It shows me a sign of distrust that we didn't have back here in 2008 and 12, and I discovered it when I returned to the council in 2016. So that's some background of how we got to this tonight, and that's my thoughts on it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Brand. Any further comments from the council?
Since when is its name El Segundo Wiseburn Aquatic Center? I just did a quick Google search, and we've been referring to it as the El Segundo Aquatic Center for the last few years, or since I can remember, and I just want to know why Wiseburn is in the name.
The settlement agreement we entered into with Wiseburn called for a couple of things to happen. One was for this placeholder name to be established, which is the City of El Segundo Wiseburn Aquatic Center, unless both parties mutually agree to change it to something else. And the thinking at the time was we are looking for significant donations and sponsorship here, and there would be a willingness, at least there was at that time, on both parties' part to entertain other names based on sponsorships or donations that come in. So the agreed upon temporary name is the City of El Segundo and Wiseburn Aquatic Center.
But it's been pitched. I mean, I'm looking at the El Segundo, esaquatic.org website, and everything on here is the El Segundo Aquatic Center, El Segundo Aquatic Center, El Segundo Aquatic Center.
I think that the city has been very careful to try to stick to the agreement. I think that the fundraising group has been referring to it as El Segundo Aquatic Center for the purpose of their marketing campaign, but that is not the official name of the facility.
Thank you.
Ideally, we get to your point, a large donation, or one of our significant benefactors, it's named after him or her, right? Right. Okay. All right, any further discussion? I just want to remind the council we spent time in a joint meeting. I think that was that before you two were, yeah, that predated you guys, but we spent November of 2017. Both parties left slightly unhappy, which is always a good sign of a negotiation, right, Dr. Moore?
Wasn't it was that the one with you and the school board?
Yes.
It was
Yes,
a 9-1 vote.
joint school board.
Simultaneous to a planning commission meeting.
Right. So this is really just buttoning that up. I think there's been a lot of back and forth between the attorneys, right, Mark? And it sounds like we're almost there, but not quite across the finish line. So your suggestion is we approve it as is, with the caveat that as long as the deal terms that come back from the Wiseburn side are aligned with the spirit or the intent of the original agreement, the settlement agreement.
And if they're not, we'll call the council back quickly. We're down to just a handful of changes, but they're important.
Great. I would move approval.
Quick question: if there's a handful of changes but they're important, is there necessarily an advantage or disadvantage to us approving this? It would just seems markedly premature. It sort of defies common sense that I think most of us came here thinking that we had 2 of the 3 legs of the stool were set, and it was waiting for us to consecrate this agreement. If one of them is, having cold feet at the altar, I mean, is there a disadvantage to us waiting for you to have the meeting before we approach this?
No, other than you'll have to get together again. So that's,
What, are you at liberty to say what the sticking points are?
Sure. One is that there's some resistance to, there's been true on both district side, to referencing each other's district in their agreements, which I don't fully appreciate, or from a legal perspective. There is, I think the underlying settlement agreement was very clear that the Wiseburn use of the pool is limited to 6 exclusive use days and 3 hours per day, weekday, during the school year, and they want some additional time, and I made it very clear that that would have to be at the city's discretion, because the whole point of the agreement is that the city will operate the pool, but other than those days that are set aside for the school use, the city wants to capitalize and make as much money to offset its expenses as possible. So that is an issue. And I think those are the two big issues. And then there's some smaller ones that I don't think I need to get into, but those are, I think, the two big issues. And Greg and I are going to talk with the superintendent and their lawyer on Thursday, and I'm hopeful we can resolve them. And if it's not perfectly in line with the underlying settlement agreement, which I think is clear, then we would come back to council. But as long as it's in line with those provisions, then we could move forward. But it's up to council on how you want to proceed.
All right, I have an open motion.
I'll second it. I think we have an opportunity to get this done, and he comes back and either says, oh, it's not done, we have to redo it, or it's done, thank you very much.
I tend to think it's incumbent on them to resolve these late coming issues. We've come this far. All we do by approving it is, walk a plank, right? I mean, they're the ones who ultimately are then dictating the conclusion of this, in the same way that either the bargaining partners would be, I would presume.
Well, just for clarification, the what we're approving tonight is the El Segundo Unified.
Well, there's the El Segundo Unified. There's two El Segundo Unified agreements. One relates to the use of the aquatic center, and then there's the other with regard to the use of the plunge, and both of those have a contribution component by El Segundo Unified. And the third agreement is the agreement between El Segundo, the City of El Segundo, and Wiseburn Unified School District. So there are 3 different agreements.
Yeah, we negotiated this, discussed this in extensively. Came up with a formula that worked in terms of being good fiduciaries on both sides, something the school district could get behind in terms of the mechanism by which we came up with the dollars based on use of the former facility. I would still make the same motion that we approve this. And if there's a problem, that the city attorney comes back and says, we're going to...
If there's any question at all about the agreement not lining up with the underlying settlement agreement and the intent of the city, it's coming back to the council. Greg and I are not going to make that decision. It's going to have to line up with what the underlying agreement is. So I think it puts some pressure on them to get it done also.
Why?
Because the pool's going to open in a few weeks, and they don't want to operate it. They want us to operate it, and I think they want us to be, the city to be successful operating it. And for that to happen, I think the underlying agreement needs to be stuck to, because that was years in the making. And I don't think they really want to open that up again. I don't think we do either. It was, I think it was relatively clear what these few points we're talking about. So I don't think there's a lot of room for debate.
Any further comments before I call for a vote? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
Okay, 4-1. All right, and we are We have Dr. Moore here, so I think it would be, if the council would oblige, I think it would be nice to take a photo with Dr. Moore real quick and celebrate the fact that we've got an agreement after all these years. So you guys open to that?
Yeah.
Sure. Let's move. Let's go down there. All right, we're back to, let's see, we had a pull on 9. That was me. We'll go to 9, then 10, okay? Yeah. Carol, I pulled 9. Consideration and possible action regarding approval of a contract for consulting services with Ignited, LLC, a marketing agency for the implementation of a marketing and police officer recruitment campaign exclusively for the El Segundo Police Department, fiscal impact $250,000. After reading this as a 2-year agreement, I'm certainly in favor of anything we can do on a short-term basis to help the police officer. My concern about a 2-year commitment, Greg, is that it will become a 2-year commitment. Even if we have an opt-out, we're committing ourselves to $250,000 over 2 years as opposed to committing to 6 months, see how it goes, and having to come back to the table, or even a year would be better than that. But I take issue with the length of the contract, essentially.
So do you want to direct staff to amend the contract to be 1 year, amend the dollar amount to reflect 1 year's worth of work?
Well, yeah, I would like to hear what the council has to say. If they concur, if not, I'll drop it and go with the majority, of course. I want to support them. I just don't like the idea of committing to 2 years with a firm we've never used before, regardless of their references.
What do you want to do, a year?
1 + 1?
I would say a year max, but I just would like to see what the results are, that they're actually working. I mean, we're in dire situation in terms of staffing, and whatever we do, I want it to be effective and put the pressure on whichever firm it is to come back with the results and earn the work, the additional work. So a year with a review period, and then an extension would be what I'd like to see.
I can get behind that.
Jaime, do you want to?
Good evening. My name is Jaime Bermudez. I'm a lieutenant with the police department. And the reason we did 2 years is, during our meetings with several firms, it was they come up with the product the first year, and then the second year is kind of like you do the hard work during the first year. Second year, it's you use that product and you develop it, and the second year you kind of get the results out of that. If 1 year is acceptable to you, we can definitely do 1 year.
Thank you, Lieutenant Bermudez. Anything we could do to put the pressure on them to perform even sooner? I mean, to me, they're not building a website, right? This is a different firm than the one building a website.
Yeah, this is not a website.
I mean, I'm hoping they get us some officers in 90 days.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. That's
considering
that's
the situation we're in. So. Yeah. But I appreciate the comment, and thank you. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you being here late night. But you guys, Chris, what do you think?
No, I mean, by their design of their program, they hit the implementation phase at week 10, and it would seem that at week 10 that leaves 42 more weeks of that first year. We should have a pretty good sense by then if the implementation is working at 42 weeks of recruiting. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, Dr. Brown.
Comment. I think this is a good step to take that we haven't before. We're moving in the wrong direction on staffing our police department, and we came up with a fantastic incentive for lateral movement to the city, which I hope will pay off handsomely someday. This is a good step in that direction for whatever term it is. But what we really need is a strong contract with the Police Officers Association, because that's going to influence people choosing this city as a place to work as an officer. If you don't have a strong competitive contract, these other moves that we're making are going to fall short. And so we need to keep the big one in mind and try to resolve that ASAP.
Thank you, Dr. Brent. Any further comments?
No.
Okay. So I'd like to move that we approve a one-year agreement for half the amount. That has an evaluation period, and that we see how we're doing and reevaluate at the end of a year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much, Lieutenant.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 10. Consideration and possible action regarding the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 1567 to prohibit gatherings where underage drinking or illegal marijuana use occurs, and adoption of resolution number blank, establishing the schedule of fines for administrative citations when there are violations of ordinance number 1567. Okay, and that was pulled. Councilman Pimentel, did you pull that? Okay. Would you like to talk now about it?
Yeah, I think that it's a laudably motivated but imperfect tool for its design use. If our stated purpose is to stop minors, people under 21, from consuming alcohol, contributing to the delinquency of a minor is a crime. It is a crime that we can resource against. We can advocate statutes for minors in possession, which is something that many states or communities choose to do. But in this, we have culpability assigned to people who are not perpetrating the crime. So if someone is consuming alcohol illegally, we are transferring that liability to a parent. And I don't think that's an appropriate use of a regulatory statute. And, broadly speaking, I can get very wound up about the English Civil War and how dictatorships use regulations when they can't use laws and crimes, and and Tony Blair and other people who mismanage things. But in reality, what we have is a shortcut here around the criminal process. And that shortcut is using regulations. And regulations are for parking and food safety and all of these things. They're not to prescribe human behavior and criminal actions. So for that, if we're serious about it, we can resource in our budget for an extra detective to do and prosecute contributing to delinquency of a minor. But if we are not going to do that, shortcutting it and transferring liability away from perpetrators, I don't think is in our interest. And it's, if we were to attribute the problem to a nail that needed to be hammered, we're hammering it in with a wrench. And what you get out of that is a bunch of bent nails, and every now and then it works. But in general, I think this is the wrong tool for the right job. And if we perceive that there's a problem, we should address and resource that problem appropriately. But using the shortcut of a regulatory regime is inappropriate.
I got to remember that wrench with the nail. That analogy is stuck in my head. I love it.
I was thinking about when I was just recently hammering.
Okay, thank you. In all seriousness, thank you, Councilman Pimentel. Further comments?
I'd love it if we were fully staffed at the police department and we could put a detective directly on this. Clearly, that's an issue we have. I don't disagree with your fundamental methodology and how you've looked at this and your points. I don't. I look at this more as it is a tool, and it's a tool, and it's a statement. It's a statement that we want to make as a town and as a group of people to say we're not okay with this. We're not okay with the few that are out there doing this, and clearly the tools that are on the books now are not being applied or have not been applied to take care of this. So putting this out there, do I believe that we're going to get a report back that there's been 10 citations issued in the first year of its enactment? No, I don't. I honestly don't. But what I think we've done is we've brought this subject matter to the forefront, and now it's in front of all of these people. and people are thinking about it, and they're talking about it, and hopefully, just simply by thinking about it and talking about it, they're going to choose to act differently. And that's why I'm in support of this ordinance.
Thank you, Councilmember Nickel. Any further comments?
I'm very happy to see us bring attention to it, and I'm very happy for us to make known through our department and through our proxies that it is a point of emphasis for us. But again, using a regulatory regime for these things is uniformly a tool of poorly run countries that lack clarity in the rule of law. And there is, I'm not going to sit here and wave around the Federalist Papers, but there are plenty of lessons of history of why this is the wrong way to do it. Russians don't fix elections in their country by making laws against people running. They just wrap them up in regulations, right? And they wrap things up like that. And I think it's just something that is the wrong way to approach something that's inherently a criminal issue.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, I'm going to call for the vote.
Does it need a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Oh,
I'll make a motion.
it
to
is a
approve.
public. Wait, hold on a second.
No, it's just it was consent
it's just
agenda.
Yeah.
It's
Second
a second
reading.
read of an ordinance and a first read of a resolution. The ordinance is an ordinance adding Chapter 13 to Title 7 of the El Segundo Municipal Code, prohibiting the hosting, permitting, or allowing of gatherings at which persons under 21 years of age are consuming alcoholic beverages or using marijuana illegally. It is ready for potential adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Just me and Alexander Hamilton, I guess. No.
4-1.
And a resolution of the City of El Segundo establishing the administrative fines for violations of Chapter 7-13 of the El Segundo Municipal Code is ready for adoption.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
4-1. Okay. All right. Thank you all. I think that's it for consent, right? We covered them all.
Yeah.
Okay, item 14, consideration and possible action to identify critical negotiating deal points for a lease agreement related to future operations and capital improvements at the Lakes at El Segundo Golf Course and Driving Range, and establish a City Council Subcommittee comprised of 2 council members to carry out the discussions with the selected bidders' representatives. Fiscal impact none. City Manager.
Mayor, members of council, you have, for the time being, narrowed the field of prospective lessees of the lakes to the 2 companies. We need to move into the next phase, which is negotiating and selecting one of those 2 firms. We thought it was appropriate to go through, make sure that we had captured the basic points that you want to negotiate for. There's a list attached to your staff report that's based on the previous agreement, also based on conversations that have occurred through this more recent process. We want to make sure, this is really a discussion item. Are these still the deal points and issues that we want to move forward with negotiating? Are there additional ones? Are some of these no longer relevant? And then probably more importantly, in order to move expeditiously on this and to involve the council in the process of negotiations, it's recommended that you establish a subcommittee of 2 members to work with staff, work with the city attorney, and be more involved in the negotiation process and potentially report back to the full council on a regular basis on the status of those negotiations. And finally, make a recommendation on which firm to continue with, and then at the end of the day, hopefully make a recommendation on a final agreement with that firm. So we would appreciate your review of the issues and items, any input that you want to provide tonight, and hopefully you'll select a subcommittee that can begin working with staff.
Okay, council comments. I reviewed the list. They look consistent with what we've discussed in the past. And then the one that was added for that I recognize is the city's ability to renegotiate terms of the agreement at the conclusion of the first term. Looks like everything else is consistent pretty much with past discussions. Council comments?
Well, I'm just trying to understand this formulation of a subcommittee. Didn't we have a task force for the RFP, and they went through this process, and they created the criteria that everyone had to meet, and bids came in, and are we going through this again? I mean, now, like, oh, we got 2 people, and now let's go through this all over again. Let's create another subcommittee to churn through the same sand. I'm just trying to understand.
Well, the subcommittee was charged with designing an RFP, reviewing the applications that came in, and then making a recommendation on the ranking of those firms. Now we actually have to. Council has decided to narrow the firms to 2, so there's an immediate task of narrowing from 2 to 1, and then negotiating a specific agreement, which will likely involve some confidential conversations, so it probably is appropriate for the council and staff rather than a citizens task force to be involved in that process. We don't have to form a council task force. You can defer this to staff. You can have negotiations as a full council and have those conversations in closed session. You can have a combination of closed session and open session conversations about the status of this. The recommendation, though, to move this most efficiently is that the council form a task force to represent the council through the negotiation process. That task force can report back to the full council on their progress and ultimately on their recommendation, either in closed session or open session, depending on how council wants to deal with that issue.
I think the 5 of us should openly discuss and decide who we want to work with, and then the 5 of us should discuss the deal points that need to be kept confidential behind closed doors. I don't think we should choose 2 of us to represent all of us.
I think it was just to expedite the process.
But how's it expediting the process to create a task force to then come back and make a recommendation as to who to go with? Didn't we already have that? We had task force members that voted.
We'd have 5 council members in the room with like maybe 2 representatives or 3 from one of the firms. It's just from a process standpoint, it just felt like pick 2 that we think are good representatives of the council, then come back to closed session with the confidential deal points and discuss those.
Okay, well then if we're going to give direction as to what conversations are had in public and what conversations are had behind closed doors, then I think the decision on which of the 2 companies we are choosing to move forward with should be had in the public's eye, should it not?
That depends if the subcommittee is going to be going to both of them concurrently or not, or if Greg suggested they're going to go to one of the 2.
I guess the alarm bells of city inefficiencies are going off in my head because we had a task force. They went through this. They voted. They made a recommendation. Now we have before us what really was a bidding process. We had 2 suitors that we chose, like, hey, these are the top 2. Now let's talk details about these deal points. I feel like we're going backwards.
I think their questions, Scott, still the level of detail. I mean, I can recall back 2 years ago when, before the extension was rejected, essentially, right? This thing was killed essentially by the last council, which Carol and I were part of. All those points that are in this document about what is the youth program going to look like, what's the accessibility going to be for residents, what are the fees going to be like residents. All those different things, how we're going to redo the clubhouse, all those points were still being discussed. And because Topgolf was the only potential solution at the time, given the path that had transpired up until that point, those conversations were affecting the potential value that they would be getting out of the asset in their mind, right? So I don't think we ever resolved it. I don't believe that the task force and that the RFP got into the level of detail of how many bays you're going to have committed to this. What's the youth program going to look like? How are we going to maintain good swings happens? Like all these things, that was not addressed. Am I correct? In the RFP, that level of detail. So it could be that. Do we end up with Topgolf and Drive Shack? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Could be that those two have very different philosophies in terms of how those things present themselves in the future. And by knowing that, we'll be better informed to make a decision. I think that's the way I'm looking at it. I could be completely off, but.
So tonight, we're being asked to identify critical negotiating deal points for the lease agreement.
And the process of going forward in narrowing it down to one, essentially, yeah. So let's address what we think are critical elements of the facility first. Should we do that?
Yeah.
Does everyone have a chance to review the list? Are there any additions, deletions?
There was one thing I remembered from the original talks with Topgolf many, many years ago, many, many meetings ago. And Greg, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I faintly remember there being some sort of bathroom near like the fourth hole or something, since it's the furthest point away from the clubhouse. Wasn't that in there?
There was a lot of conversation about renovating the bathroom that's at the maintenance facility, and I can't recall whether the proposed plan, they looked at the expense of doing that. I don't recall if that made it into the final plan that Topgolf proposed or not. If that is something that is a critical deal point, then we can certainly add it to this list.
I got an email today from a former council member who was a member of those negotiations to remind me of that, and it did remind me that that was something that came up back then. I don't know if it's critical, but it was just something that I wanted to check in with you and see if that was somewhere in the agreement that it's kind of been washed over, because it didn't make this list. So you answered my question. You're not certain if it ever made it into the final agreement.
You golf there. Is that something that the golf community wants? I've never heard that before, but.
Allegedly, someone I know or someone very close to my person has used Plant Life as bathroom facilities when on that side of the golf course, because on the weekends it does tend to back up, and it's not a 2-hour 9-hole round, it's more like a 3-hour 9-hole round. So having some sort of facility on that side of the course may be useful.
And that's kind of one of the things we want to get into the details about, so that's why we feel having a 2-person council task force to negotiate these terms would be much more efficient than getting the 5 of us together.
Okay.
So I would recommend that you, Scott, as a real estate person, and Chris, if you would bump in to help.
I'd like to second that.
So you just want us to jump on the grenade. That's what you want us to do.
No. The 3 of us have been involved. You guys have the fresh set of eyes. Let's get back to the list, though, before we vote on that.
Okay.
Because I don't know that Chris doesn't look too enthused about being on that subcommittee anyway. Is there anything missing?
I'm sorry, comrade, I couldn't hear you. I was going to put my water wings on over here in my helmet, but.
Anything missing?
I think it's critical that we chisel out. I don't know if both these facilities are proposing a 3-level, hitting 3 levels of hitting bays, that we do something where if you're there to work on your golf game and hit, then maybe all that happens on the lower bay, and that is the last level that is filled when they're filling bays. Mm-hmm. So if people are having a 5-year-old's birthday party up on the top deck, and messing around, a guy who's working on his draw or his fade can actually do that down on the lower bay and not be at the circus per se, Mm-hmm. I don't see it in here. I mean, we have robust youth programs. We have golf pro instructional opportunities for adults, but we're not really kind of chiseling it out.
Yeah, I thought there was something in here about access for residents, but now I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, the original agreement had talked about access to, from a municipal golf course or municipal.
Well, the fourth from last bullet point talks about accommodation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, early entry, non-technology driving range hitting bays for golfers prior to on-course play. Thank you, Greg. So maybe just expand that one, Scott. Is that what you're saying? Accommodations for early entry, non-technology driving range hitting bays for golfers prior to on-course play.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else,
I'm good with it.
Chris?
I mean, I think it will be worthwhile for us to have them walk through a lot of the implementation of what does the youth program look like? How are we protecting and insulating those? I know those are robust plans in the last negotiation, so there's ideally a bit of a template to work from. But I think that so it's fresh with everyone, and we're looking at an apples-to-apples comparison of what does this look like for our, a very valuable and thriving youth program, and how does it work, just in line with what you're saying with the other golfers.
Something that's critical deal point for me is I do not want the city to manage the 9-hole golf course. I want another management company to do it, either the person operating the driving range or not. I don't want us to touch it.
I think that's in here under. Hold on.
And then
key, like turnkey, same lease for both, right?
Based upon one of the visitors we had at public communication today, I think in one of these deal points should be that the city reserves the right to either chisel out 3 days of special events on the 9-hole course if needed, so that we can ensure that we have the oversight to say we need this cross-country race to happen. So it's not at that operator's discretion, but we as the city, and then vice versa. I just want to make sure, and I'm sure this would be the case, that they would need to come to us for, say, like a special event permit. But if whoever was managing that facility decided that they're going to do a music festival or a beer and wine festival, that would be something that we as a city could
veto.
Oversee or veto. Yes.
Yeah.
Great points.
So those are the details we would like you to discuss as part of the negotiation process.
Good points. Don, anything on your end, Don? Nothing. Okay, thank you. Chris, anything else? Carol?
Nope.
All right, I think we have direction on the success criteria, for lack of a better term. Okay. And what about the I think I heard Mayor Pro Tem make a motion that you, Scott, and you, Chris, are you interested in doing that in all seriousness, being on this subcommittee?
Take my protective gear off and no, of course.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so great. Done, right? Anything else on that?
Do we need to approve that?
Did you vote?
I think we have the direction that we need, and we'll work with the subcommittee and start the conversation.
Don, you good with all that too?
Who do we want in this subcommittee?
Well, I think we decided that. Unless
I know, but it's just 2 council people. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two council people with staff support.
Okay.
Staff is not a voting member of the subcommittee, but we'll be with you to assist in the efforts.
Okay, and if we need to consult with any of the operators that are currently out there for details on youth programs and things like that, are we privy to bring them in to consult on that?
Sure.
Okay. Because as much as I may know some, I don't know enough.
Okay, great. Don, you good with that? The direction here? Okay.
Checking your watch.
All right. City manager reports.
Mayor, Council, I just wanted to thank everyone that was involved on the staff side. Thank the Council, first of all, for the direction that you provided in strategic planning and for approving the budget, but particularly on the staff side, a tremendous amount of work goes into the budget process. Every department's involved, the directors, their managers, their admin staff. But most of all, it's really Joe Lilio and his finance department who spend the last couple weeks, often on Saturdays and Sundays, putting the budget together, and I just want to publicly thank them for their effort. And I'm glad we have another year's worth of planning behind us and clear direction from Council on how to proceed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. City clerk. Oh, sorry, Mark. City attorney.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Thank you. I knew that. City clerk.
No, not tonight.
Okay. City treasurer is not here. City council member reports. Council member Pimentel.
Just thank you to the staff for all the efforts they put in. I know it's not pleasant, and like I alluded to before, when you get to the culminating point of a lot of hours of work, and then the good idea fairies come in and start sprinkling magic dust and ask you for minor changes that revolve with a chain reaction of events that you have to make. So our apologies for the inconvenience on that, but your hard work is certainly well applauded. The other stuff I'll just yell inside my car.
Thank you. Councilmember Nickel.
I would like to invite everyone to the fair on Richmond Street this Saturday, the 22nd. It's a fantastic fair. If you'd like, I will be there at 5:45 a.m. setting up, and we'll likely be there breaking down around 7 p.m. So if any of you would like to come and join me and help with the festivities.
I did my duty picking up trash at that fair a couple years ago.
Well, we may need to ask you to do that again. So, but yes, please come out. It's a great event. It's, Mr. Griffin was here earlier. We've invited so many of the town's youth groups to take over that north end down near Studio Antiques and the 99-cent store. And there's an energy with the youth in this town that's pretty spectacular, and it's on display there. So I invite you all to come down.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Brand.
I pass.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Perstick.
Yeah, I just want to thank Ron Swanson for providing in-and-out lunch for all of the staff members on 9/11, and from S&S Hardware. And thank you to the fire department for having the pancake breakfast. It was a great event for all the kids. And once again, jackets. Oh yeah, we each got a jacket. So we're waiting for the police. So the police left. We're waiting for the police department to give us something. I remember. There, where he is, Joe. The fire department gave us these lovely jackets. So we're expecting something from the police department next time there's an open house. All right, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, it was busy last 10 days or so. I represent us on the South Bay Council of Governments Steering Committee and the Transportation Committee. We had a very good meeting recently. There's a lot in play with Metro as it relates to the Green Line, the connection to Crenshaw, and the ability to transition to LAX. Orlando from Ken Berkman's department was there, did a great job informing me, representing us. The Gateway Cities COG was there as well. There was a compromise between our COG and their COG about what solutions could work for us, and really we're at the mercy of Metro, but we're working politically to advance our cause there and to really eliminate the amount of delays getting from our stations to LAX and to other places. The El Segundo Art Walk had a great appreciation day at the Aloft Hotel. Congrats to George Renfro and the folks that were involved with that. It was a good showing. We have a public meeting. Greg, the public meeting with DWP that we've been working on now for quite some time, that's tomorrow, isn't it? Do you have the details on that? Planning meeting? Okay. While I'm continuing talking, can you get me the details on that, please? Chevron gas vouchers, there was an incident, as we all know, yesterday, a controlled burn because power was lost, one of the generators, and they had to clear the system, burn the fuel off. But then there was another incident, I can't remember the specific term, that produce dust in the air. If you live like where we live, I don't know if you got a voucher on your car, but there's a car wash certificate that's being provided by Chevron for folks living on the west side of town. And I have I think you were supposed to ideally head down to Chevron today to pick up your voucher, but if you hadn't had an opportunity to do that, there's a phone number to call, which is 310-615-3747. 615-3747. That's government affairs, and they can take care of your car for you, at least the car wash anyway. I had a good mayor's hours today, and thank you for showing up. It was kind of funny. Hillary Adderich, who's a long-term teacher in El Segundo, said we need more green in town. Literally within 3 minutes, the landscaping crew that we just outsourced to on Main Street showed up with some plants, and we're planting in the front of the Blue Butterfly. I was like, man, if everything was so easy. And let's see what else. Champions of Business. Thank you, Carol. Great event. Congratulations to Barbara Voss, Al Kiahi, Megan, Mickey, Mashia, Greg Carpenter, who am I missing? Lily Craig is Chevron, Chamber of Commerce,
We certainly highlighted all of the development activity and development projects that our Sam Lee and his team handle every year that really make
Great job. Jeannie Buss was awarded the Champion of Business, or honored for that. The Lakers hosted it at no cost to the city, which is tremendous, at least for the event itself. It was incredible. We had the new editor in charge, I forget what his title is, CEO effectively, of the LA Times, Norm Pearlstein, legendary, speak to us. The guy's brilliant, had no talking points, and went on for 20 minutes about world affairs. And
we turned a profit.
We turned a profit. Awesome. I think it's the fourth time it started. I think back when I was on EDAC, it's the fourth consecutive, isn't it? Or third? Third or fourth?
Third, yes.
Third. And it's finally to the point where it's actually turning a profit, going back in economic development, and it's putting El Segundo on the map as a place where big ideas take off, and we are truly being taken seriously as a place to do commerce, so it's great. I was at Adams Field coaching a soccer game just this past weekend, and one of the parents, good friend of mine who lives across the street, said, wow, this is cool, because we have a shelter coming right to Campus El Segundo. Why don't we have solar panels on the top of our shelters? And I thought, gee, I don't know, that's a good question. So I just want to plant the seed to look into that, because to me, if we could offset the electricity use with that, we're putting the infrastructure up anyway. Finally, we had a good talk at LAX, at ESMOA with LAX. Deborah Flint was there, I was there, a curator and an artist. And we spent some time talking about the inherent tension between LAWA, Los Angeles World Airports, to our north, and how we're kind of like in this quandary where on one hand it's great for business and commerce and everything that drives activity here. On the other hand, we have a lot of issue with some of all of their growth and some of the plans that they have. Forecasts from the Southern California Association of Government put them at, what's the number, Greg? 114 million annual passengers. I know Carl knows. Something like that. Within 10 years, I think, roughly. Does that sound right?
Certainly headed towards the 100 million.
And we had a theoretical constraint for years of 76 million, Carl? 78?
78.9 or something.
78.9. They're well exceeding that now. So we have major issues ahead of us, as I've said before up here on the dais, to Dr. Brand's point. Carol and I had a good meeting today with and Carl was there as well, who's been fighting this fight for 30 years, as was Dick Croxall, who is also very, very knowledgeable and subject matter experts in this regard. We're also at the table with us and some other folks that represent stakeholder groups around us. So we're starting to develop a strategy to work on this issue long term. I think I'll end on that, and that's all I had for this evening. Thank you all very much. Go back to public communications. Okay. We are not going back to closed session, and we're finishing before midnight. I just want it noted for the record. Tracy. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.